Okay, so why don't Michelle, and I'll tell you the story later if anybody want to continue on with that conversation. We have a roll call, Michelle.
Sure can. Director Jones?
Here.
Director McLaughlin?
Here.
Director Bernstein?
Present.
Director Crawley?
Present.
And Director Solano?
Here.
Okay, so can we maybe stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? It only take a couple seconds. So I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. Come on now.
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God,
indivisible, with
liberty and justice
for all.
Yay! All right.
Thank you, Robert.
Woo, yes. Thank you, guys. See that with a lot of spirit. All right. There's no reportable action from our closed session to present to the public. So we have public comment number 2. Michelle, we have any?
We have no public comment number 2 at this time.
Okay, so there's no public comment 2 at this time. So what I want to do, I want to rearrange the agenda, if I may, from and to move the consent item up to be the first item we talk about, because I want to. There's been a special request made that if we take care of that first, and particularly looking to adopt the resolution approving the certification of the November 3rd, 2020 presidential general election, we need to do that first before we move into the swearing in and the presentation of the certification for re-election of our board members, to have that early in the agenda. So that's the switch I want to make, so that I know there's probably people on Zoom right now that's representing both Virginia and Rob that want to get the family members to kind of, before they fall asleep, back east. Because the way it is, our regular agenda item is pretty far down the list. And so I think in kind of honoring them in their reelection and their families, before they fall asleep, to watch them get sworn in. Is that amenable to the board? If it is, then why don't we proceed along that line? And then we'll move back into our regular agenda. And so the only other switch we would make under the presentation is to take item number 5, which is a presentation by Belinda, making that number 1, and then going into the Zone Haven as second item, and then the need assessment final presentation 3rd. So, and beyond that, we'll then fall back into our regular agenda items.
So you want to do the presentations before the report of the fire chief and general counsel report?
No, yeah, I guess I'm sorry. Yeah, I skipped that. We'll go with the fire chief report and then the general counsel report, and then we'll move into the presentations.
Sounds good.
That sounds good to everybody?
That's fine, Robert.
Okay, so I guess we'll move back up to the consent calendar. Can I get a motion from anyone to accept the consent calendar?
I'll move to approve the consent calendar.
I'll second.
Motion been
I'd like
made
to,
and seconded. Are there any comments?
I have just a question on number 8, but we can either pull it or I can ask my question now.
I think at this point we would have to pull it off.
Okay.
Yeah, then I'll amend my motion to approve the consent calendar minus item 8. which will be pulled from the consent calendar.
Item 8 or item 9? Item 8?
8.
Okay. All right.
So
So
Rob,
no-
are you going to second that?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank
Okay.
you.
I'll second it.
So roll call, any other comments? If not, then we'll go to roll call.
Director Bernstein,
Aye.
Director Crawley,
Aye.
Director Solano,
Aye.
Director McLaughlin,
Aye.
and Director Jones.
Aye. So the motion carries. So, so with that, then we'll do the swearing in ceremony. So, Virginia and Rob, would you mind standing? So I can, we can kind of get this administration of oath going. I don't see your pretty face, Rob. Where are you?
I'm standing.
Okay. Okay, move your camera so I can see you. So if you would repeat after me when I state your name, I want you to state your name. Like I, Virginia Jane Crowley, and I, Rob Solano. You know, when I get to that point, I want you to raise your right hand. And so repeat after me.
I, Rob Solano.
I, Virginia Chang Karali,
I, Rob Solano.
Okay, great. Do solemnly swear and affirm
do solemnly swear and affirm
that I will support
that I will support
that I will support
and defend the Constitution of the United States
and
defend the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies,
and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies,
foreign and domestic,
foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
that I will bear true
faith
faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
and I take
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well,
and that I will well,
Rob,
that I will
that I will well
that I will
and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter.
and faithfully discharge the
discharge
duties about which I'm about to enter.
Thank you very much, and congratulations again to our re-elected board members, Virginia Chain Crowley and Rob Solano. Everybody want to give them a hand? There you go.
Thank you, Robert.
Okay.
Congratulations.
Can I just-
Any comments that either one of you want to make?
Yeah, I would, but I'll go after Rob if he
Okay.
has.
I just consider it an honor and a privilege to be part of this board. I think you read my almanac answers, and I'm very impressed with the group that I served with. We may not agree on everything, but gosh, you know, the way our board is compiled of public safety professionals, yourself, Robert, as a former CEO to a nonprofit, Virginia and Chuck with your financial background. I mean, we're very fortunate that we have just a diverse amount of experience, not only professionally, but personally also. So thank you all. And I thank my family and my friends and all the supporters and for this honor. Thank you.
Great.
Rob, so Robert, I just have a little statement that I want to
Sure.
make because it's such a weird year, but I'm humbled and honored to be reelected to a third term on this outstanding board, the Menlo Park Fire Protection District Board. And as we all know, this year has been just a difficult year, but trying, but also kind of challenging and in many ways rewarding because of the extreme wildfires caused by climate change and the lack of adequate defensible space in wildland areas, among other things. And it hit very close to home when you have displaced friends and or families in the CZU lightning fire. We also faced COVID-19 together and navigated uncharted territory. And throughout these trying times, our fire district friends and neighbors came together to help victims in Ben Lomond and Boulder Creek while their homes were being ravaged by the fire. And further, the bravery of our firefighters and the incredible support from staff to the public and the entire fire district were second to none during the wildfires and the pandemic. So from the bottom of my heart, I want to thank you to the fire district residents for your support during these two crises and your vote of confidence in me. My friends who were kind enough to ask how I was doing during these difficult times, and my family who gave me their unwavering support during my campaign and during the times when the fire board did the people's work. So I promise to continue doing the work to keep our community safe. Thanks again for your continued support and your vote of confidence.
Congratulations again to both of you. Glad to have you back on board again.
Thank
for
you,
another
Robert.
4
Thank you.
years.
Thank you, Robert.
So at this point, there was an item that was pulled from the consent calendar. And I think we need to, Chief, I'm gonna, if that's okay with you, we will deal with that first before
Absolutely.
we move into your report. So Chuck, you pull the item. So could you maybe go from here and their intent?
I just had a question for the chief. Chief, in terms of our policy on waiving these, and in general, I'm for it. I'm not questioning the policy, but it talks about reciprocity. And I was just curious about East Palo Alto. When we built the fire station and so forth, did they waive building fees for us and so forth?
Yes, they did.
Okay, that was my question, and I'll move to accept number 8.
I'll second that. And I just want to, can I just say, I want to thank We Hope too for the work they did to help with the personnel, the firefighting personnel in Boulder Creek and Ben Lomond. I know that they were involved with that, and I'm just very grateful that they were able to partner with the fire district to help victims there.
Michelle, is there anyone from We Hope in the attendance?
Yes, I believe we have Pastor Paul Baines, so I'll
Pastor, if you could say a few words after we have, before we actually vote.
I'm not sure if he's on. I'm actually texting with him. He was heading home, so I been trying to keep him aware. So I'm not sure if he's on.
Okay.
But
All right.
but he's fully aware of what's going on and definitely thankful for the support.
Okay. Thank you, John. So a motion been made, has been seconded by Virginia.
I'm on. This is Pastor Baines. Can you hear me?
Hey, Pastor Paul, how you doing?
I'm blessed. I'm blessed. I was just waiting to be let in, and then I was trying to also text Chief Johnson, but I was moving too slow.
That's okay. Trying to do the hat trick, do everything you want. You can't do it sometimes, but you're on now. So if you don't mind, just saying a little bit about you and with the project you're working on. I think it's fantastic. We go way back on a lot of different things. So this is a milestone for the city of East Palo Alto, and also look in terms of trying to work and deal with the homeless in our community. One segment of the community.
Well, thank you, Director Jones. I greatly appreciate to all the directors this opportunity and even this consideration. We Hope has been in the community of East Palo Alto since 1999, working with the homeless and the marginalized, not just in obviously the East Palo Alto community, but Menlo Park and actually the region. And so as we have worked with the homeless with jobs programming and feeding programs, and of course our mobile hygiene services, which was alluded to earlier, working with the Boulder Creek and responding to the fires, and actually also Santa Rosa and all over, we also felt the need, how can we produce housing to help the homeless and the marginalized. And so therefore, we are partnering with a company to bring these model homes to East Palo Alto, where we're going to house a homeless family and also a homeless senior citizen that has been in our community for quite some time. And then these model homes will also be the homes that we're going to show to the rest of East Palo Alto in the region as we build a factory in East Palo Alto that will create jobs, about 90 to 100 jobs, and then produce these 2, 3, and 4 bedroom homes. A 2 bedroom home for $85,000. So it's a pretty significant cost reduction from what we're accustomed to seeing. Obviously, that doesn't include the land. And so we are greatly appreciated to Chief Johnston and his staff that has been walking us through both with the factory and the model homes, and just the partnership that we have with Menlo Park Fire Department. You know, we love partnering with you all because you all are laying your lives on the line in various capacities and investing and sacrificing on an ongoing basis. And, you know, we just want to give back and support you all as first responders. So that's kind of it. I'm open for any questions that you may have. Um, um,
Any
yes.
questions board members have for Pastor Paul, Virginia?
I don't really have a question, but I do want to just say thank you, Pastor Paul, for your help and your partnership. I know we've said it a million times before, but it deserves another million times. I just want to let you know, and I'm not even sure if I mentioned this to the fire board before, but in one of the packets that we got, we had a letter requesting help from, I think, the Boulder Creek Fire Protection District. I think it was from Boulder Creek or Ben Lomond, one of the two.
Ben Lomond.
Yeah, Ben Lomond. And so and the letters were just very heart wrenching. And I'm just glad that we were able to provide the support and the help that they needed, and especially for the residents there. And it was almost like this cry for help. And Pastor Paul, I think you heard that cry for help and joined us in, helping. And so thank you for that. I know that they're very grateful. And I know the public's very grateful too, at least the people I've spoken with. So thank you for your work in helping.
Thank you for those kind words. I had the distinct pleasure of being able to actually go up there myself and just see our staff, and also, you know, the volunteer firemen, and also the ones that are on the clock being paid, I should say, to be firefighters. And I just couldn't believe the courageous efforts that have taken place, and how Menlo constantly, which is a world-renowned fire department, that really we're not doing anything compared to what you all are doing around the world. So it's a privilege and a gracious opportunity to come around and be around such great a fire department. So thank you for those kind words. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think, Pastor Paul, that you're very modest with you're a very modest man, and I think there's a lot of credit. I've been knowing you for quite some time, and what you have done, and unselfishly going up to Ben Lomond was, I mean, you didn't have to do it, but you did it. You saw a need, and you was able to help those individuals up there to the point to where they had a sense of well-being and a sense of safety and security, knowing that somebody is still there for them. And so with that said, I want to thank you personally, and also thank you on behalf of the board and the fire district and all the personnel, employees that are here, that keep going and doing what you're doing, because your reward is going to be there. So,
Amen. Amen. Thank you.
right. Thank you for showing up. Is there anybody else there in your organization that want to say something? If not, then we want to say thank you again. And so now
they're in another room, so I'm in my main office here. I did record this on my phone so they can hear the kind remarks from all of you, so I can share it with our team. Thank
invite
you.
us to the groundbreaking when you have it.
Oh yes, by all means.
All right. Thank you very much.
Mhm.
So the motion been made, first and second. Michelle called for the roll call.
Director Bernstein,
Aye.
Director Crawley,
Aye.
Director Solano,
Aye.
Director McLaughlin,
Aye.
Director Jones.
Aye. So motion carries. Again, thank you. So now we'll move into the chief report. So Chief, you want to take it from here?
Thank you all. God bless you.
God bless you too. That's Paul.
Yeah, directors, for expediency, because it's a big night with a lot of presentations, happy to answer any questions on what's in the chief's report. It's all pretty much laid out.
So any questions for the chief?
I had a
Chuck?
Yeah, there's some things that weren't in the report, and Chief, if you answered me on this, then I apologize. I didn't see it as of about 5:15, but I was curious about the status of the accreditation process.
We'll have a report for you in January or February, but it's ongoing. It has been slowed a little bit, not on our side, but on their side because of the pandemic and just, the responsiveness. So, we're moving forward. Chief Navarro's on it pretty much every day, every week. And everything's moving forward as fast as he can move it forward in an environment where other people at times, cannot be as supportive as we would like.
And then the second question I had was about Kathy Jackson, and if you have any date for when she'd be returning. I'm concerned that we probably should be, if she's not going to be here for another month, that I think we need a temporary to beef up the finance department.
Yeah, obviously it's a personnel issue, so I got to be careful. But we're managing internally. I think Long's doing a great job. I'm sure the finance committee would attest to that. He's on top of it. I don't know there's a need for that, but appreciate that that offer of assistance.
Let me just ask
Virginia?
our general counsel here. This isn't a personnel question. What was it in terms of it being a confidential matter? Could I ask Stephen Miller?
Yeah, sure. So can you hear me? Just a quick sound check.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm going to answer a different question than the one you asked, and then I will also try and answer your question briefly, which is we're now not only asking questions of the fire chief to some unagendized items on his report, but these are now unagendized items that were not even included on his report. And so I'm a little uncomfortable with just the whole conversation of free time for questions of the chief. And I think it would be better if we narrowed the focus at a minimum to the questions that are on his report, and even then to make sure that we don't go too far afield. So having said that, I defer to the chief about his comfort level in discussing personnel matters at a public meeting.
I'm not comfortable at this point in time myself personally, because it's not on the agenda. If we want to agendize it, let's do so. It's not in a more of a confidential manner rather than discussing whether she's Kathy's gonna come back or not. That's totally up to operations, up to the chief to decide to work through that. And far as I'm concerned, I think we need to just leave it there, not get into deciding whether, as a board member, whether she's coming back or not.
Robert, through the chair.
Yes, Virginia.
Harold, I'm looking at the item on your report about the triangle encampment situation with the multiple fires involving these homeless encampments. Basically from, as you said, large quantities of discarded clothing. How many fires have we had? And seems like the city is not fully on board to do what you and Caltrans think should be done. So how are we approaching this with the city?
Well, I wouldn't say they're not on board. I would say that there's some dilemma because the city has to provide alternative housing. And unlike East Palo Alto doesn't have, the same amount of options, they could possibly partner with East Palo Alto, which was one of my suggestions to them. But, I think we're well over 50 some odd fires this year. We've had
In the
several-
same encampment, right? In the same one.
Yeah, the same
Right.
area called the Triangle. Yeah. And I know that some of those individuals have moved, as was alluded to us. So we found that encampment now at Marsh Road and Highway 101. Some have left for other places, and they honestly, some of the folks reaching out have said that others have been incarcerated. So, you know, it's a dynamic issue, but your population count out there, because of the seasonal impact and, you know, how uncomfortable it is, and obviously not a good place to be when it's raining. There's less people out there than there would be in the summer. So there is an opportunity to, you know, address a smaller group of people in a probably more proactive measure. But that's not our responsibility, it's the city. So, you know,
Right.
they know it's on them. We're hoping it gets finished, abated, and then we watch it to make sure it doesn't happen or grow again. But, you know, I think having the task force has been both helpful and frustrating. Caltrans is willing to do more than I thought they would be willing to do. And they've actually been a pretty good partner, and they're dealing with this all over the state. So.
One of the issues that if I may add, tack on a little bit with the chief, is that what I have heard being at the meeting is that some of the people who are there don't want the services that are being offered to them. So that's making the situation even more difficult for the city to do anything, because there are comprehensive services they have from the county and from nonprofits that are trying to provide certain services, but some of the people just don't want to leave. And of course, you know, they don't have enough housing for the majority of the people that's out there.
Robert, may I ask? a
Sure,
question?
absolutely. Who's that,
Yeah.
Rob? Yeah.
Yeah, Chief, at our last meeting, I asked if there were any notes or anything, or meeting notes. And I looked on the Menlo Park website, and I didn't see any. Can you provide those to the board, I don't know, after our meeting or something?
I can give you what I have, and actually what you have is kind of what I have. They say in their meetings it's recorded, so I've never seen minutes, but for one meeting. I can ask again. We asked before for that, so
Yeah.
it's
Is it like
strictly
the
up to
Brown
the
Act?
city.
I'm sure, since it's a, you know, public entity or public meeting, and Stephen could answer this question, isn't it supposed to be agendized or recorded, or at least given some type of written correspondence or anything? Since they are public agencies involved, you know, wouldn't that involve the Brown Act too?
So I don't know off the top of my head whether this entity is subject to the Brown Act, but it's an odd little wrinkle of the Brown Act that there is no requirement legally under the Brown Act to take minutes. I've never heard of an agency that does not produce written minutes, but it's not because the Brown Act requires it.
Yeah, the thing that, you know, my point is that the governor's office just established an actual office of homelessness or housing for individuals. And I think this would be a great program to pass to the governor's office. And I'd really like to do that if I had, you know, some written correspondence or written notes in order to forward that to them, because they are looking for projects. And I've asked a few times, and I think it would help what's going on there if there was some, one, documentation, and two, since they did create this new state, it's actually out of the governor's office, you know, we should take advantage of that type of funding, even though we're not the primary responsibility. But, you know, it's just, you know, good governance.
Right.
That's why I'm hounding. That's why I'm hounding for the notes. Okay, thank you.
Well, go ahead.
Oh, just one last question about the chief's report, but if you have another comment, Robert, I don't mean to interrupt.
No, I was just gonna give Rob the person over at the city. Her name is Nicole. She keeps. I know she sent out the minutes, and she's a keeper of it. So if I get there, I'll send you her link, Rob.
Great, Thank you, Robert. Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks.
Robert, Harold?
Yes, Virginia?
Yeah, so do we have a final tally of how many wildland fire deployments we did this year?
Yeah, and we'll have that. We're tracking that. You know, it changes weekly because there's more and more, but we have every call that we go out there on, including now 911 calls based upon one caller that was abusing the system. We coordinate with PD and the CHP on those types of details. And, you know, everybody works fairly well together, but ultimately you're trying to solve the problem. And I think from my standpoint, where we are is it's the city of Menlo Park needs to give Caltrans the green light. I know they were meeting with the NGOs, non-governmental organizations, to address the last remaining group of people. I think as Director Jones said, because he's on the calls too. You know, there's people that don't want to go. So that's going to have to get addressed. And, you know, I asked the city, to what Director Solano had said, I asked the city too, is this even going to be a committee next year? Because obviously the mayor is changing out, and, you know, would there still be any type of an effort? So I believe there will be, but I'm not positive there will be either. I mean, it doesn't sound like it's going to go away, but whether it's the frequency or not, I think the part that was interesting this time is they skipped a month. And during that month, there was a lot. We had probably our best report out this last month from the non-governmental organizations that are sponsoring everybody, but also admitted and gave us the tally count on who was left in the encampments, which is the smallest number yet. And then also told us that they have been telling people that, you know, it was going to all get shut down and they needed to leave. So I hope, you know, I think once they heard that, are they actually going to do something and make everybody leave or not? You know, they don't want to look ridiculous either and say that they're going to have to leave and then nobody ever comes to follow up with that. So
Yeah.
we're in this kind of limbo land right now with the city of Menlo Park. So
Thank you. It's a tough situation.
yeah, there's no straight line in it. That's for sure.
Any other comments for the chief? If not, then we'll move on to item number, the Zone Haven presentation. Oh, excuse me. No, we're gonna have move into the General Counsel report. Steve?
Well, you actually read my mind, President Jones. In the interest of time, unless there's a universal clamor for hearing from me, I thought I would pass this evening so that you have more time for the other items on your agenda. I'm happy to chat with you if you prefer.
Okay. All right. You want to kind of give a cue in to the 17th?
Sure. So you have a study session scheduled for the 17th. That's just 2 days from now. That will be led by my wonderful colleague, Nicole Witt, who I think is on the line. You are required by state law to receive a 2-hour mandatory ethics training. And that's what this session will be, to satisfy that state legal requirement. I'll just warn you that there is a curriculum set by the Attorney General's office that must be accomplished, and it's a sprint to get through all the material. So it is 5 hours worth of the material crammed into a 2-hour session, and Nicole is a super experienced trainer in this program, and I'm sure you will learn a lot from her and enjoy the time. She's got an interactive session planned for you that is both informative and entertaining and useful and practical and legally required. So I commend this session to all of your attention.
Thank you. I'll be there. I'm hoping the rest of the group will be there too. So
Yeah, Michelle, the board clerk, will come after you if you're not there. So,
I know.
yeah.
I know. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Steve. So now we're gonna move into, we shifted item number 5 up to number 1. Belinda, are you there? Are you prepared to
Whenever you're ready.
it's on you now. It's all on you. I'll turn the table over to you.
Great. Good evening, everyone. Great to be here. Let's see. Are you seeing my screen?
We can see it, but it's only showing 2 lines of text.
Yeah,
No,
prepared
it's
to
just-
do
it's
that yet.
distorted.
It's distorted.
Yeah,
Yeah, we're only getting maybe 2 inches.
Okay. Let's try again. How's that? Is
good.
Yes.
Yeah.
that better?
Yes.
Oh, great. Okay. So I'm going to share some of the work of the Strategic Planning Committee. And so Strategic Planning Committee members, feel free to chime in. And I think what I'll do is be fairly brief. And then after I'm done, Strategic Planning Committee members can add more information. And I know you all have the slides as well. So there's basically two things to present. One is a proposed process for refreshing your annual board priorities. It's actually been about a year since you all came up with your priorities. I think it was March of last year. It was January through March that we worked on it. So this is a proposed process for refreshing those board priorities each year. And then second is a proposed process for how the board might consider new issues that a board member wants to bring up. So I'll start first with the process for refreshing your priorities. So as you know, this row on the top here is the 5-year district's strategic goals. That's part of your certification. And Chief Navarro is heading these up. And so below here are the 10 priorities that you all came up with almost a year ago, which fit under those strategic priorities and each fit under one of the different committees. So how might you each year refresh these? And of course, these 5-year strategic goals don't change, but perhaps the board priorities might get adjusted each year. So a proposed process, including how we might do it this year, includes that you might convene a special meeting in January to refresh the board priorities for the next year. We can have a review of the strategic plan from Chief Navarro so that we understand kind of the umbrella that your priorities would be falling under. And then we can, we could go very broad and start from scratch and ideate our new priorities. But I think the sense from the Strategic Planning Committee was that instead you would take a look at the current priorities and see, what might you take, is there anything that's not such a high priority anymore? And is there anything missing? And then you might do some dot voting to kind of see where everyone lands, and there's ways to do that online. And then you would adopt your refreshed, updated priorities. And then the priorities would be assigned to the different committees based on the topic, and then the committees would report back regularly to the board. So that's that process. And then also some recommendations for how board members might bring new issues to the board. So now you actually already have this. This is from your policies and procedures manual. I designed it a little differently, but it's this exact content right from your policies and procedures manual. So this is a process that you have for how to bring up new issues for the staff work plan. So similarly, this is an idea, a concept for how board members might propose an item to be considered for future agenda items, and where you would decide on whether an issue should be considered further. And then board members would work with staff to put together an issue brief template. And this is, not something that we invented or that the Strategic Planning Committee invented. This is a common tool used by boards and city councils, right? Where you have like just a summary of the issue with what's the impact, what's the cost, what's the problem, what's the context, and so on. So I'll stop there, and I'm sure the Strategic Planning Committee members will have things to add.
Jim, you have any comments?
I was just saying, I want to thank Belinda for her work. She really has helped, focus my my efforts on getting this completed. I feel like we're, starting to narrow this down to completion. I do favor, a special meeting early in January for us to focus on this. I think it's that important. Make sure that it's jibes with our strategic plan, that it still represents where the board is. It's been almost a year. I think we've had enough discussion on it, and everybody's up to speed on the process. And it's been a unusual year in so many ways. I think it'd be an opportunity for us to kind of do a reality check. Do the priorities that we established early 2020, are they still relevant? Do we want to revise them? So again, I think we're at completion, and I want to recognize Robert Jones' effort in this. I think he's done the heavy lifting in working with Belinda, and really has been the catalyst to keep it moving and on track. And again, I think we're at the end point. So thank you.
Thank you, Belinda. Thank you, Jim, on that comments. I think it's been a group.
Oh,
Am I the only one that cannot hear, Robert?
yeah. Director Jones, if you can hear us.
Yeah, you just kind of phased out a little bit, Robert.
I'm gonna contact him.
Almost.
We're not hearing you, Director Jones.
He has his phone and his computer on, Michelle.
Yeah, I'm gonna let him know.
And if the process is actually
Awkward. Hang on a moment. I'm gonna try to contact him.
He's back.
He's muted, yeah.
Melinda, I just want to thank you too for all the work that you've done on this. It's a lot. It's a lot.
Belinda, I think you've done a good job in the putting together the accreditation plan and this plan for us also. So thank you.
My pleasure. Director Jones, we didn't hear what you said, and I think you had.
Oh, wow. I had this long speech. Sure. Okay, I won't go back over there. I'm just saying.
No, I want to hear it.
You did a great job. I think this as Jim mentioned, that we're at this point, and hopefully there's lessons to be learned and taken into 2021. And it's a process that as a board, we can continue to repeat the process. It's about the process and how we gear up for the next year. So I want to say thank you again for kind of guidance in that direction. Any other comments or any other board members? If not, then I think, Belinda, thank you very much for all your hard work.
My pleasure.
Chief, you have any comments you want to make at this point in time? If not, then we'll move on to the next item. Because I assume that everybody's in sync with where we are and where we're going. Okay, so now I'm back off of mute. We'll move on to item number 3, which has to do with a Zone Haven presentation. Chief, is there any, do we have someone here to take us through that?
Yeah, I'm more than happy to take you through that.
Okay.
And I'll start off this presentation. So zone haven is a word that all of you will get to know the name of here very quickly within the county, and I'm sure in a greater area than that. But as we are well aware with the multiple wildfires and the large scale of them occurring, but also in any type of a large scale evacuation order that's needed, most of the time when these evacuations take place, it is something that's done quickly at the scene or the area by multiple teams. They have to real quickly look at paper maps or maybe digital maps and try to pull together what they think is needed for an evacuation and starting to draw lines with roads or county lines or et cetera. And especially maybe even in areas that they don't even know. And so Zone Haven is a product that San Mateo County is working with. And it is a product that we are a user of. We're privileged to be able to be one of the users within the county. And we actually got to see success with this in the CZU fire actually earlier than it was expected to be released. And so right now we are having a Know Your Zone campaign that is going out within the county. And with that, we are seeing actually basically pre-planning for evacuations by divvying up zones and being able to work collaboratively and have partnerships with our local police departments, et cetera, so that we can quickly and easily identify and get zones evacuated in a quick fashion without having to do all this laborious work quickly. And so we have multiple modes. So I want to introduce Jeff Saunders and Charlie Crocker with Zone Haven. They have a presentation that is excellent, and we will be presenting to others within the community. And we want you to be educated on exactly what this product provides and what we are doing as a user. And just be aware that everything that is in here, I've already collaboratively worked with Atherton, East Palo Alto, and Menlo Park police departments to get a lot of this information in here. It is still ongoing, but I will be working with our Office of Emergency Management with Ryan Zollicoffer on other partnerships and means to get education out. So I will now turn this over to Jeff Saunders and Charlie Crocker.
Hey, good evening. I'm Charlie Crocker. Nice to meet you. I'm the CEO and one of the co-founders here at Zone Haven. We recently, I think it was about a month ago, had a conversation with the NPC Ready folks, and we've done a lot of these conversations throughout the county with many different city managers and their teams, both for the public and internal. First and foremost, we're thankful to San Mateo County because San Mateo County is really the birthplace of Zone Haven. We really started to understand and build out the application about 2 years ago with the support of many folks like John and others across the county. Chief Cox and Matt Sampson have really been drivers for us.
I've been having a difficult time. Sure.
Have been really supportive here. And once we established the application in San Mateo County, we've got people coming on board all across the Bay Area and beyond at this point. So Zone Haven is a collaboration platform. It's really meant to help law, fire, and OES work together within a community and then work together with mutual aid as other folks from outside the community come in, especially on some of these large events like the CZU complex fire, to work together and to be able to get access to information. In addition, it's a collaboration platform for the agencies and the communities. And so as you make changes and you do reporting on an incident, the community has a single source of truth, a place to go. And this is something that we did at the CZU Lightning Complex, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. So fire knows no boundaries. We get no advance warning, and in most cases, it's a multi-agency response that's required for this. And so this is really the problem set that Zone Haven has been focusing on. Evacuations, as Chief Johnston said, are ad hoc. In most cases, they're done at 3 o'clock in the morning on the hood of a pickup truck. Sharpies are pulled out, maps are printed, and people are trying to figure out, how do we get people out of harm's way? This is a photograph of the Kincaid fire. They had 40 hours before a known wind event was coming, and they needed to figure out how to evacuate 200,000 people. And in doing so, they built zones, they figured out the routes, they figured out the traffic control points, they figured out all the places they wanted to send people, and they took them all 40 hours to do that. So our goal here is to provide you with the tools and the platform to reduce that time, to make the reflex time from an event happening to your ability to communicate to the public that this evacuation needs to happen is much, much shorter. And then communication can often be delayed and prone to error. Each agency in many cases has their own different way of communicating, different social media. If we had if the CZU complex fire, San Mateo County uses the SMC alert, which is Everbridge based, and Santa Cruz County used Code Red. So there were two different systems for communicating. So how do we get the same messages to both of those platforms? Next. So these are the fires that just happened just this season in Northern California. We had our first gigafire with the August complex fire. The number in pink shows you the number of counties engaged in each of those fires. So the August complex fire up in the top left, 6 counties were involved there. How do you think the communication went out to the public? How do you think the consistency in communicating evacuations went? It was difficult. Especially, we talked to a lot of the folks both in the tent, the incident command folks, and the community, and there was difficulty in getting consistent information. We were participating, and our product was used in 2 different fires: the CZU complex fire in pink and the glass fire. The thing about the CZU complex, from the very beginning, we had one site we sent people to. Regardless of whether you were Sonoma, San Mateo County, Santa Cruz County, and then eventually even Santa Clara County, there was one place to go to learn about what was going on with that incident. In Napa, when we got there, the glass fire, they had 3 different sites up. Napa had their own site, Sonoma had their own site, Lake County had their own site. Each site had its own evacuation methodology, different colors, different ways of calling things out. Zones would even change. There was even a zone in Santa Rosa called Calistoga, named after the Calistoga Road. And so when they evacuated that zone, people in Calistoga, actually in Napa, thought that they had to be evacuated. So there was confusion that happened, right? So this is the kind of thing that we're really working hard to be able to start making that reflex time and that communication much more clear. Next slide. This is photographs that I took inside the tent for the CZU complex fire. You can see the application being used on the top left in a tablet. This is where they're selecting a whole set of zones and determining the population, the number of the acreage, and then the routes that they're going to be publishing. The bottom left is a photograph of the Santa Cruz Sheriff working with the Ziente Fire Department. They're using the zones to determine where they're going to be putting the traffic control points and whether or not zones are going to be turned from warning to order or allowed back in. Even PG&E was able to get access to the zones, and they were using that to communicate where they thought it was safe for people to go back. Next slide. So here is a video very quickly. Hopefully it'll show up here. This is an animation, very quick, of the CZU complex fire, 36 days. The fire is still in recovery, so we're not done. But on the first day, we got a call and said, can you turn this application on? We weren't quite ready for it, but we did it anyway. Within 3 days, we had a huge number of zones. We went from 1 zone to 134 zones under evacuation within 5 days. We peaked with 134, including the zones along the northern border, the southern border of Santa Clara County. And the key value here was we were lucky that we had built these zones before this event had happened, right? So San Mateo, we had already worked with them. We had just finished doing some zones for just a portion of Santa Clara County, and Santa Cruz County had some zones that they've had around for quite a while. And so we were able to bring those all together and provide a common story. Next slide. So really the goal here is that we create one authoritative source. So the example you see on the left is the application. They've selected, I think it's 11 zones. These are the zones in Santa Clara County that were going to be turned to a warning. They went to warning for 2 days. The fire ended up not going there, so they were lucky enough to be able to turn that back to normal very quickly. But the same information from that got published in the CAL FIRE news release. It got published in the publicly facing website. We had hundreds of thousands of people hitting this website every day. Next. It got published to Twitter, same message, same zones, same story. Waze has all of the zones in their application. And so Waze actually shut zones down and redirected traffic around those zones or told people that they shouldn't go into those zones. And then some of the tools that the fire and law use, in this case, this is a tool called Intera. Other tools in the fire that are used are tools like Tablet Command and others. They can also get access and see the same information. So regardless of what applications are being used, we're able to send out a common message to all the different applications. So we're kind of neutral. We're the Switzerland in the notification. You may have another notification system. That's great. Let's send them the common information and then everybody gets a common message. So I'm going to pass it on to Jeff and he's going to give you some information about the onboarding process that we've gone through with the whole county and where you guys currently are today.
Great. Thanks, Charlie. And thanks for having us. I appreciate the opportunity to present to you guys, to all of you. So over the course of the last year, we've gone through all of these phases with the county, and we've worked closely with Chief Johnson and his team to work our way through the zone setup and the pre-plan booklets, the pre-plan zone booklets that have been created already. And with the rest of the county, we've been working out to work through the alerts and notifications setup, and now we're into the community facing side of the application. So this has been a process of educating and building up the skills and the information in the system to support pre-plan and to support alerts and notification. And now here we are, just having launched about a month ago the community facing site and campaigns to go along with it. So we've traveled the path with the county, and it's been an excellent trip so far. What we announced as of mid-November was the Know Your Zone campaign. So we've been working with the county to promote a Know Your Zone campaign. We have a website specifically set up called myzone.com. I'm going to switch over here to show it to you. That walks the community through all the things that they need to know about the community facing site and what all the information means at each of these steps, different ways they can prepare, different stickers and fridge magnet templates that can be used to keep everybody informed as to what zone they're part of and they're in, and then ways to get involved with the SMC Alert or San Mateo County Alerts program, different social media accounts to look into, and how to prepare and work with with individuals' families to get to know all the key things they need to know about their zone and about what to do in the event of an emergency. So this site is live currently, and users within the community and throughout the county have access to this. These are the zones that we've been working closely with Chief Johnson about, and working to populate with specific information that supports pre-planning and zone evacuation. Come back here. So some of the other things that you'll start to see are some additional billboards This one there's one that just went up. You can see it behind my head too. That went up just yesterday in South San Francisco. There's an additional one going up soon in San Carlos, Redwood City area along the Highway 101 corridor. And so there's a lot of key information there and a lot of awareness as part of this campaign that's being driven throughout the county. In a few other places, they're looking at putting up in individual jurisdictions to leverage trash can receptacles and bus stations to have additional poster board and making sure that the community can learn more about this. So some of the goals of the campaign have been really about creating awareness around evacuation zones and to motivate the residents to find their zone and know all the key information about it before an emergency strikes, and to make sure and encourage them to subscribe to county or local alerts so that they can be warned in an efficient manner, and then to provide community members with that single go-to place that Charlie mentioned before, where they can find out all the information about what's going on in their zone, in their area, and to get connected up with other sources of information that may help them. So some of the next steps that we've been starting to walk through both with the county and locally in your area with Chief Johnson are really around partnering with law enforcement to continue to refine the zones and the details within those zones so that the pre-plans can have the most up-to-date information at any given time. These zones, I don't know if we mentioned that earlier or not, are really dynamic zones. As new information comes in, as new information is learned, they can be updated, and the plans and the related pre-planned information gets updated at that time as well. Continue to work with the county on community outreach and to look at developing and running internal and external or community-facing training drills, which the application helps support as well. And so these are some of the next big things coming up on the list for Menlo Park Fire Protection District as well as for the county. And we're also starting to work with some of the neighbors, your southern neighbors across in Santa Clara County, and it could make for some very good drills and training to understand what an evacuation might look like that involves both Santa Clara County and San Mateo County right along your borders. So I think that runs through the main details of what we wanted to cover today. Chief Johnson, I don't know if there's additional information you would like me to share or not, but
Yeah, so as you can see, this is a very dynamic and very powerful program, and it's great that it's being developed. So we are learning, and it's nice that they are able to take our feedback and pretty quickly provide improvements. But as you see here, we do have our district complete in a what I would call a decently ready mode, though continually looking to find information, update of what would be useful information. It's not necessarily having everything. We need it to be simple and efficient in the service that it provides. And as we get this information ready, we will be providing that out to you so you can see what exactly gets provided and how it gets working. Next year, we will begin looking at how we are going to promote within the community, and also looking at how we will provide some of our own training drills within the community. But we want to get this developed and work with our local partnerships first. So I want to open it up if there's any questions that you might have for us at this time.
Is there any board members that have any comments at this point? Anybody? I can't see your hand. Oh, Virginia.
Have a hand up.
And then Jim.
Jim
And
and
then-
Chuck. Jim and Chuck should go first, because
I just have a few questions. Is this, can it be targeted so that if I live in a particular zone, can the SMC alert system be structured in such a way that it only alerts people within that zone?
I'll let Jeff or Charlie answer that, but I believe the answer is yes, the way it's tied into San Mateo County OES system.
Mhm.
Yeah, so we're working directly with the Everbridge folks, Jeff Norris and team, All the zones are inside the Everbridge application. And so like during the CZU complex fire, they were able to notify specifically people that are in that zone based on their address. There are some portions of the notification system that are not as precise. So in some cases, messages can bleed outside of the zone, depending on if it's a cell phone based or that kind of thing. But in general, the concept is these zones, just like they are in Waze, are also in the emergency management system.
So if I'm enrolled in SMC alert, I am opted in and would get the alert.
You would get a zone-based alert. So when they send an alert out, if they are using the zone for that alert, and then you would get that information. Now, the key thing is there's two types of alerts. There's the wireless emergency alert, which looks for people that are in that zone that may not be registered. And then if you're in that zone, for example, Atherton E007, but let's say you're visiting somebody in San Francisco, you're still going to get the alert because you're registered for that zone.
Sure, sure. So this would be activated by, say, the county OES say there's a declared emergency and the EOC is up and running. Would that be the source for these kinds of alerts?
So there'll be multiple sources, right? So we think of it as an alert fabric, right? So not everybody's going to get information the same way. So, for example, we're working with we're trying to find a way to. We're working with Airbnb because of transient populations, right? How do you notify somebody who is just visiting your neighborhood, right? That kind of thing. So we don't want it to be only one methodology. So if you're signed up for the SMC alert, you will be getting Nixle and Everbridge alerts that are specifically sent through that system. Now in here, so Jeff, go up to the pencil. If we were to change this zone right now to an advisory, evacuation warning, evacuation order, that would automatically send information to Waze. It would automatically send information to Jeff Norris and the Everbridge team, and it would automatically send stuff to social media, right? So, and then the person who does the alert gets to pick which of those they want to send it to.
So Director McLaughlin, the answer to that question is it still belongs to the law authority to initiate an evacuation. However, we will be working in partnership. Ryan Zollicoffer and I have been in discussions so that the local law enforcement and ourselves typically would be in a unified command. And when this needs to be activated, we will have certain individuals within each of our departments that will be able to change these statuses and do that. But we are working on getting an MOU to be able to implement that within our district.
You know, I just, real briefly, I want to compliment you two gentlemen on developing a system like this. I think it's marvelous. I think it has, I hope it's adopted widely, broadly. It's a system like this that will save lives. So thank you for your efforts in this area.
Yep, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
I think someone else, Chuck, is
Yeah.
that you?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
I wanted to ask a question too. I actually saw the presentation for MPC Ready because I'm involved in that group. And also, as Jim said, very impressed by this. But I wondered if you could paint a picture for the kind of disasters that this would be relevant to. I can certainly envision how it would work for a wildland fire evacuation. Does it only work for an evacuation, or do you see it being relevant for other kinds of information?
Well, for
Good
us
question.
here locally, we would be looking at obviously areas of East Palo Alto along the creek for flooding. So if there's areas for potential flooding, we would want to be able to alert for that. Also, we could do a shelter in place. So depending on any type of an incident that may occur, whether it's a gas main break or a chemical issue, or maybe something that's on a freeway, if you had some sort of a release from a chemical tanker that spill over and you want to shelter in place or even evacuate an area due to a release. So there's a lot of different potentials. You think about active shooters with a school, again, same thing, we might be able to implement. So we're actually learning about what are the different ways we could implement and use this.
Give me a picture then of, let's say, a toxic spill on 101, and people got a message that they needed to evacuate. Whose message would it be, and how would they find out which direction they should head and things like that?
So that is part of the app, which I'll let Charlie and Jeff explain, but that is part of our pre-planning. We already have evacuation routes pre-planned in here. And when those messages go out, we would actually be directing people to those routes of which way to go. And we can actually pre-position police officers or other resources based upon the pre-planning that is already on this map. And that is something that I actually hope.
Do you mean the
Sorry?
fire district? Or
No,
do you
I'm going to say we collectively, the community. I'm going to say the police department, but it may be fire department. It depends on the incident and what resources are needed. But that's actually a training that we will actually hopefully offer to you at a later point once we get more dived into this.
Hey, directors, let me give you a point of reference, because I think Director McLaughlin said something that was important that I hope gets clarified. If we're waiting to set up, staff and emergency operations center, it's too late. So this was always developed back in the day, and I say develop, we didn't develop it. The county fire chiefs had a meeting, reviewed the product several years ago, and looked at this as a preferred way to actually take, which you're excited about too, a lot of things that we were doing already, but put them together in a package that could do all the things that you're starting to see come to fruition now. They also used this during the pandemic, as when it really started to take off for restaurant locations and so forth, which was completely foreign to what the intent was. But when the chief started this with Zone Haven, the whole purpose was fire knew there was going to be a problem. Law was not on board yet, but to build this out and then collaborative work with law enforcement to do what you're seeing get done. It's a dynamic tool for operations, whether it's fire or PD or collaborative. At the end of the day, we can't be sitting around waiting for people to get a message that never goes if you don't have a system that allows for that to occur. So the original intent of this, working with Zone Haven, was they saw it as a dynamic operational tool that would allow evacuations to occur much more quickly, understanding that in shelter or movement, it's primarily a law function, but it's typically triggered by fire saying, you need to get this area cleared out for whatever reason, flood, fire, hazmat, it's all encompassing.
Virginia, you had your hand up, I think.
Yeah. Because a lot of the questions that I had have been answered, but just a quick one regarding partnering with law enforcement. I know that we're working with some of the police departments, but a lot of these areas, especially in the like the wildfire areas in San Mateo County, and I'm thinking specifically of the CZU lightning fire area, is rural. And so how are we working with the larger area, geographic areas, like with the sheriff's office, for example? I mean, 'cause it just seems like it's just a lot to coordinate. And I mean, as we saw with CZU, even, I mean, not that it was that we were in any danger, but if you look at the fire districts, District 4 area, which is where I live, which is actually the largest rural area in the fire district, I know that there were concerns over here in unincorporated West Menlo and probably even in Weekend Acres with the CZU lightning fire kind of continuing its path east, right, towards Portola Valley and Woodside. And so I'm just curious how we're coordinating with the sheriff, since they cover so much of that.
Virginia, let me say this to you. So
Okay.
actually, Sheriff Bolanos and the Sheriff's Department, I won't speak for, Zone Haven, but they've probably been more on this than anybody else, because they've
Okay.
had skin in the game in the CZU fire. So
Yeah.
if anything, it's the smaller jurisdictions, the Athertons, the Menlo, the East Palo Alto, that have not been affected, where this is, something new. But, remember, the sheriff had to go through the entire first portion of the CZU fire, and
Yeah.
was already aware of this, because the county, again, like I said, when when the county changed the application of this for food and other things that were part of the, pandemic response and trying to give a map where people could go for takeout food and, support local restaurants, it already took a turn there to where I think people started to see this had a lot of other implications, and I know Carlos, as far as I know, has been super supportive of this whole thing because he's seen real time results where others haven't been impacted that way.
Right.
So, Rob, do you have any questions? I have a comment.
Oh, wait, can I just finish? So that would go along the question like with Atherton and, I'm thinking of Wash Road. I know they're very diligent, the residents there, with regard to just being prepared and all of that. But then even in Sharon Heights and further west, in this near 280 Sharon Heights Country Club and, that Sandhill Circle area, 3000 Sandhill. I'm just thinking of those areas too.
It's all part and parcel of the whole system. The way,
I know,
the way
but are
that
they
Sun
even?
Haven works? It's all got to be part of the public education process. But it's.
But I'm thinking of the law enforcement piece. I just want to make sure that they're on top of the respective police departments are on top of this.
Let me just say one thing. What we did from the very beginning is we built out what we call multi-agency teams. And so there were 11 teams spread throughout the county, and each team was made up of law, fire, and emergency services folks. Those people met often over the last year, both to just get to know each other, but also to truly come together with a common plan that worked for all the agencies. So, so we learned that here in San Mateo. We're deploying that right now in Santa Cruz. We're deploying that right now in Yuba County. We're deploying that. We invented multi-agency teams in San Mateo County, and now that's a process that's been adopted across the Bay Area. So there's been a really good collaborative effort on this whole project.
Okay,
And
thank you.
Chief Johnson's led that, Virginia, for the district. As he said, he's been in coordination with the law enforcement entities since the beginning, because that's kind of what we do. Remember, we're not a city department. So
I know.
for us, outreach is a common thing on a regular basis.
Thank you.
So I think this is Chief Harrell and Fire Marshal Johnson. This is a question for you, both of you. Where do you see the board going from here with this impressive system?
Well, I think it's just more for you to have an awareness level, number one. But number two, where we do have a role is in the outreach to the communities, supporting that. We may not have full control because it is a county-wide effort, but as John said, there's ways for us to support it, work with the CERT volunteers, make sure, whether it's to pay for things like magnets or door hangers or whatever. To get the message out is something that I think we could support probably in maybe a more robust way. But, as John said, he's going to work with Ryan and we're talking to our law enforcement partners. We don't want to get ahead of anybody, but at the same time, we need to work in collaboration with them to get the word out.
Okay. Thank you. Michelle, do we have any speakers out there?
We do. We have Lynn Bramlett would like to speak. I'll get that going.
All right. Thank you, Michelle.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to start by congratulating the directors who have been reelected and to very much say, yes, we very much appreciated Charlie Crocker and others speaking to us at our October meeting. As I thought about this more, I have questions and some comments. And yes, I do think it is an impressive system. So MPC Ready formed based on a structure that corresponded to the Menlo fire areas. And I think Atherton is organized that way too. And we probably will need to discuss the implications of the new zones for our organization. And I have a question: if the fire district plans to evolve from its current area-based response structure to the new zones. So I don't expect an answer tonight, of course, but I bring it up. And then how can we be sure that all residents will receive an evacuation order? What about those without an internet or phones? And, in particular, Bellhaven comes to my mind, East Palo Alto. So that's where a strong organization like MPC Ready with active block coordinators and a local CERT organization and a ham radio tied into a zone could be so effective to help support a rapid evacuation. So in the public communication process, I also see an opportunity to help recruit block coordinators and also put more structure in place in these zones. I do have some comments too. There could be other kinds of evacuations. For example, let's say the Hayward fault erupts, which is predicted to erupt. We all know that at some point. People in Bellhaven, for example, may need to leave their home, but they don't need to leave, they need to go somewhere else, but it may not be, miles away, for example. So I don't know if there's any plan to maybe stagger departures, but more importantly, is there a plan to have a muster point, if you will, or whatever you call it, where people and pets without personal transportation can go to catch a bus or some other mode of transportation if they had to leave and couldn't leave on their own. And then these disaster shelters, one of the slides mentioned them. I don't know where they are or how well stocked they are. People may need to evacuate and go to a place. For example, the Hayward fault erupts, they've got to go somewhere. They don't have a place to go. What is the plan for that? So I don't bring up these points to in any way, seem critical. I think this is a wonderful tool, but I think there's a deeper level of detail needed here that could very well be in the works. I just haven't heard about it. And I think absolutely residents, would want to get involved and help. And, in some of this planning, I certainly would volunteer for that kind of help, starting with our most vulnerable populations. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. Michelle, is there anyone else?
We have no more public comments.
Okay, so is there any more comments from the board members? I want to thank Mr. Crocker and the rest of the team to thank you for your presentation. It's fantastic. I'm just excited as a 3-year-old with a lollipop on. This is kind of stuff that makes a lot of sense and can go a long ways. From the people that live on the seafront to people living up in the wilderness, there's disasters going to happen across the continuum. So thank you again for your presentation. I'm sure you'll be hearing from us.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
So this next item on the agenda is special need final presentation. Chief, you want to, who's going to be leading us on that?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Robert, which one is it?
We're at the special need final presentation.
Oh, space needs. Yes, so.
I'm sorry.
We have the vendor that should be here to do their final presentation. John Hitchcock's also on the call. He's been working with them.
Okay.
I don't know if he wants to say something first or you want to dive right into, them and their presentation. Probably have John up there at least to say something first.
Okay, John, you unmute yourself. John, can't hear you. I guess maybe not.
Looks.
There you go. There you go. Getting feedback from him. Is it?
Robert, this is Charles with RRM. And then Mike
Charles
is also joining us, but his title says John Hitchcock because of the Zoom link. And I thought John was on, but maybe he got disconnected.
You got a Rick on.
Yeah, there was 2 John Hitchcocks at one point, so it looks like John gave you one of the links is the same one. I don't know if that precludes him from getting in, but you guys might as well start.
Yeah.
All right. I'm gonna get my screen sharing. Give me 1 minute here. Should be that one. Oh, it moved on me. And make sure, you should be seeing the space needs assessment cover sheet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, well, we're gonna walk through. There's not a lot of change from our last, but we'll go over those and where we're at and open up for discussion. Sorry, my mouse cursor went away. There we go. I'm gonna delay here. So I have for brevity of it, I know everybody's had the updated space needs report. The presentation is a little bit more narrow, but if there's any questions on the actual report, we can go back to that as well. We will try to go through the presentation portion quickly, so there's more time for questions and discussion. Just as a reminder that the district went through this process to see, evaluate their space needs for the current properties as well as available properties and what that looks like in the future. And identify alternatives to help guide in a future direction. We worked with the district to examine personnel projections and service demands to forecast future space needs, identify current and projected space deficiencies and opportunities to increase efficiencies for fire operations and administration, with the goal of recommending an action plan to upgrade, replace, or repurpose existing facilities and sites, and then provide any guidance on disposition or acquisition of properties. Some of the main goals were to provide adequate space for all personnel office storage to support the operations strategies, and then to make the best use of the facilities. So kind of quickly, after our last presentation, which I believe was in, was it April or May, the board has taken some actions through the strategic planning committee and then approved by the board for several small projects. Based on those, we've kind of narrowed it down because those provided some direction as to what the different options are. However, we want to make it clear that all of the other options are still viable. So the projects that have been undertaken or approved, I should say, in the big scheme of things are relatively small. Not necessarily that the dollar value is small, but things could change. And this is not the narrowed down recommendations are not cast in stone by any stretch. So our main presentation goals are to inform the board of final project updates, review the most reasonable remaining options. And John and I worked through that to kind of get the right language for that, because we want to make sure that everything is open. But these are what we've gone through and through the analysis, the options that we believe are the most reasonable based on the current decisions that have been made, and then answer any questions. Before I jump into the updates on the actual plans or when we go through those, the biggest change that you may see in the plan was we did finalize the cost estimates. So we did have our independent cost estimator go through. We took basically one for each station and each scenario so that we had enough covered. And then for some of those, like the fire station 1 site, those were extrapolated into square foot cost and adjusted for the different options. And those numbers do include.
Can I just ask a question? I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you. My screen is not advancing. Are you referring to slides here, or are you?
No, he's not. They haven't advanced at all.
I was.
Okay.
That's what I was trying to. I have 2 screens up for some reason, and one.
All I've been able to see is a fire engine, and nothing else has gone on from there.
Well, I appreciate that because I was advancing one and.
Okay, now I
at the
see.
screen.
Thank
There you go.
Okay.
I had the same problem as Chuck. I was like, wait a minute, am I missing something? And I was trying to click on the screen and obviously nothing's moving for me, but
Yeah, if you could go back to the beginning just to show us the slide so we understand where you are, I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you for speaking up because thinking I was showing everything there. So, all right, so just the quick slide is executive summary, which I talked about, just going over what the purpose of the study and the report is, what the main goals of the study were, and then the project updates. This is where I was just right now. So it's not a bullet there, but I just wanted to highlight that the major change to the information in the plan was the cost estimates. And those were performed by Sailor Cost Estimating, who does fire stations throughout the state and public facilities. And then we did not do an actual cost estimate, construction cost estimate for every scenario, but we did one for all of the unique scenarios, and that we were able to take that and we updated all of the numbers throughout. So all of them are using that same baseline information, but the detailed cost estimate is for basically one of each scenario. And then those numbers do also include soft cost in those. And they're also projected out about 2 years for each one. So a construction start date of approximately October, which then inflation takes that to the middle of that, which would be about May of 2022. So I'm pushing it out much further, just gets very vague. So we try to keep it somewhat relative to today's dollars. So in our kind of format, it is linear, but we're going to bounce around slightly. We're going to focus primarily on Fire Station 1 and the administration site. That's still the most complicated of the scenarios. We're going to go through kind of just a high-level summary of each, and then we'll go through each scenario again quickly. And then we'll jump into Fire Station 77 and the warehouse. Those options go together. And then lastly is Fire Station 3 and 5, which are pretty simple, and I think will be an easy discussion. So for Fire Station 1 and the administration site, we still have, we've narrowed it down to 3. There were 5 options. For option A was the 2-story, to remind everybody, it's a 2-story fire station with administration on the 2nd floor, the training tower, which will be consistent with all of the options, and a 1-story accessory building for storage and training purposes. That includes underground parking underneath the fire station. And then fire prevention would remain at the administration site, and the annex Santa Margarita would be removed for additional parking. So this option, and you can see a little triangle there, those are the options we'll be reviewing. This does align with the prior board action to renovate the front of the administration site for prevention. It does require a little bit more disruption, so we'll go through some of those. Option B is a 2-story fire station with the administration and fire prevention on the 2nd floor, the training tower, and then a 2-story accessory building. I'll say this one is the largest of the options. This is essentially taking everything and moving it over to the Fire Station 1 site. The underground parking would be located beneath the accessory building. And then the 2 existing administration building sites could be sold off. This one does have some challenges with it, in addition to the size of just squeezing everything on there. Option C is a 1-story fire station and a 1-story accessory building. And that should actually also include the tower. And then the administration lots would be merged for fire prevention and administration. This one was really tight. We did look at it, and this one was removed just because the space, it doesn't use all the space at Fire Station 1 and requires a lot of extra work at the administration site, and really is may not even be approved because it requires a variance in the floor to area ratio within the city, as well as additional underground parking, and tying into the existing building can be quite challenging and disruptive to operations. Option D is a 2-story fire station with fire prevention on the 2nd floor, a training tower, and a 1-story accessory building. Underground parking would be located under the fire station. Administration would remain at the current site. And then we could provide additional parking on the annex property. This option would conflict with prior board action as making the adjustments for fire prevention. And then, so this one, there's also some security issues with having fire prevention over at the fire station versus administration and how to separate those areas. So based on the prior action, this one was removed as well from our discussion, but it is still in the report. Call it one of the least viable options based on prior action. And then the last one, option E, is the 1-story fire station, training tower, and then a 2-story accessory building with administration on the 2nd floor. Underground parking underneath the auxiliary building and our accessory building, and then fire prevention would stay at the administration site. This was our preferred option as it goes through, as kind of makes the most logical sense of what resources to go where based on our opinion. And we'll go through that one as it provides opportunities for phasing as you move forward and more with least amount of disruption.
Charles, if I could chime in for just a moment, this is Mike Scott.
Yeah.
The triangles on each of these, as Charles is going over for your benefit, the just overview of each of these options, the triangle options are the ones that we heard were the most preferred. And so those you will see, will walk you through the graphics briefly of each one of those options. So as you're able to put picture to words, just wanted to let you know as Charles is giving you this overview.
Yeah, and that's also in the report. So you'll see those triangles in the report. Those are tied with this. So I'm gonna, as I said, I'm gonna skip ahead from the station 77 and warehouse, and we'll come back to these and the station 3 and 5. And we'll go into the discussion of the fire station and admin building. And unless there's an objection, we thought it'd be best to have discussion specifically regarding the fire station 1 and admin buildings, or the sections that we're talking about, to keep it clear, unless there's anything disagreement with that, if you want us to go through the full presentation first.
Is there a preference for the board members? I think we just go through the presentation and then we'll look at all of them, then we'll come back and if we have any questions.
Okay, perfect. So option A, again, this is a fire station 1. I'll walk through some of the strengths. So this one just phasing, and most of these are similar to the phasing, but it'd be to construct the EOC, kind of the storage in the classroom first. This one could be the training tower, could or could not be in station 1. Currently, we have it tied in with underground parking. So we would construct that at the same time or a similar time, but that could be delayed. And the idea with this is this can be used for fire station 1 to help offset some of the temporary needs that could be there. So that's first. It's also out of the way, and it frees up some of the current space needs that are in fire station 1. And then the second would be to build the fire station 1. And then lastly, it gives some flex space that would be to do the remodel of the administration site. This does co-locate a number of programs for operational efficiencies. It basically makes a large headquarters fire station, which is similar to a lot of districts or departments. Replaces the facilities, which fire station 1 is probably the highest on the list. And it gets operations and admin on one site, but also in different locations. It takes the use of kind of the biggest site that you have. There is still underground parking is a large cost. In any of these options, there really isn't enough site area to provide adequate parking on the site as is. Again, with the parking, it's going to have a longer construction period, but with this option having it underneath the accessory building, it's less of an interruption to the fire station 1 project. So that means the permanent fire station 1 will be down for less time, or be in a temporary station for less time. Because of putting more bodies there, administration, it does require a larger amount of parking than just having a fire station on site. And then also within EOC, in other classroom functions, it creates a larger parking. And I believe everybody has a presentation, but the costs are up here in the top. I don't want to necessarily read off numbers, so make sure everybody has those. And that does kind of move around a little bit just based on how things got laid out or how to fit, but those are on each of the options.
Something to point out about the costs is as we're looking at these, you'll notice that the ancillary building and the fire station on some of these options, their costs, you might see a much lower cost fire station, but a much higher cost ancillary building. And a lot of that has to do with where the underground parking that you're about to see is located. If underground parking is under the fire station, in this case, you see that's almost doubling the cost compared to the ancillary building. When you see it in a future option where it's under the ancillary building cost is much higher because it's built on top of that parking structure. So just if you're wondering, wait a minute, why is that option so much different? It's that we are looking at the actual size of each of the facilities. So, like a 1-story station is obviously cheaper than a 2-story station, and how much space is in the ancillary buildings, but where that parking is located affects that.
Thanks, Mike. And yeah, and the other thing is just what administration offices are over the fire station. One thing to note that with the EOC portion of the auxiliary building, it's very similar to the fire station cost because it still is going to be an essential facility.
So as Charles shows you each of the plans, I'll just try and quickly walk you through this one, just showing our underground parking that is under the fire station. You'll see the dashed in building above it, and then the EOC dashed in over in the back in the training tower in the rear apron area that would just be on grade. So the next slide will show us this option 1 having the fire station out in front over the underground parking with the ramp up on the north side of the site going under to get to that underground parking. The training tower centered, you'll see a couple of these options. We're showing a couple options for rotating the training tower, but both give you circulation around it and as maximizing parking on site. And then this shows you the ground floor of the ancillary building. And then next slide. So with this option being just a single story for the ancillary building in the back, but the fire station itself is 2-story and housing the admin above. So in this scenario, the ancillary building would have a short construction duration, but the fire station would have a longer construction duration. You would still be able to build the ancillary first, but the fire station, you could have that and utilize that as for portions of your temporary station, but then you would have a longer construction because of the underground parking and the 2-story nature of the station.
So the option, the next part is the administration in the annex. So this is really keeping fire prevention over at the annex, which has been already been supported by decisions. This does increase the staff security and plan by keeping the fire prevention over there in different areas where the public is coming more, so there's less of a public into the fire station side. It does provide additional parking for district vehicles at the annex site. It reduces some of the building needs at the annex site, and relatively easy type of work for the annex site. So, and primarily it's some slight reconfiguration, remodel of the annex site to meet fire prevention needs now and then in the future. And then the biggest thing would be adding a parking lot at the Middlefield site, primarily for the public, but also for the overflow vehicles of fire prevention.
And we understand right now that facility there's some minor renovations happening there to support fire prevention. And the drawings that we have here are showing full build out with future anticipated offices of utilizing both the first floor and the upper floor.
All right. So option B, Mike, you want to take through the fire station again?
Sure. Charles, I'll let you walk through the strengths and then.
Okay. So just to point out, the cost is over here on the left. Make sure you see that. This is the larger of the options, essentially moving everything over to the Fire Station 1 site. It's a much more complex project, a larger project. It does replace the fire station and eliminates the deficiency needs, kind of some of the challenges. It puts a lot more use on the site, parking requirements, and it would require more variance from the city also in order to make this happen.
Robert, may I? Robert, you muted.
Sorry, Jim, go ahead. Yes.
Yeah, I would say, you know, I appreciate all the work that's gone into this, and it's, pardon me for interrupting the presentation, but I don't believe that we'll be selecting any of these options tonight and making decisions about or any kind of a commitment as to any of these designs. So I just have to ask if this is time, you know, well spent for us as well as our two consultants. And perhaps I'm the only one that feels that way. I mean, I have a number of questions about the work that's been done, but you know, we've all had the opportunity to go through this and see the detail behind each option. And again, it's wonderful work and very well presented. So that's not the issue at all, but rather, you know, if we are not going to make a selection and make a commitment tonight, and I don't believe we are, then I'm not sure that this is time well spent.
Would it be apropos to, since this is a final, and I understand that where you're coming from, but would it be apropos for the presenters to take us to those areas that may have changed since the last presentation to kind of speed this process up a little bit?
But I guess, Robert, that kind of goes to the, you know, my issue is what is the purpose of receiving this presentation tonight? It is the intent to actually make design selections? Because I don't believe it is. And perhaps I'm wrong.
No, I think pretty much we are just receiving the final presentation. And I think that's pretty much, because we did ask him to, there was some questions from the last time. And I think there was I sensed from the group that they wanted to bring closure to this part of it. And so the question is, how do you bring closure to it? And so I think this is part of what we're trying to do is, and I could be wrong, please help me out, is to trying to bring closure. Now, to what level of detail? Is I think what I'm hearing from you, that this is maybe way more detailed than you anticipated.
Well, it's not, yeah, actually my issue is different than that. You know, this effort started as a space needs assessment. How much space do we have? How much do we project we'll need in the future? What numbers do we need to take into consideration in planning future facilities? And I feel at some point it morphed into a facility design effort. And that's not what I was looking for. I mean, at some point we'll be replacing Station 1 and building some of these facilities, and we will need to know how big does that facility need to know. So this effort has gone far beyond what I thought it was going to at the outset. And again, please understand me, gentlemen, this is wonderful work. and will prove valuable to us in the future as we start to get into design specifics and plan the replacement of these structures. But I just point to things like the Station 77 option A includes battalion chief office and quarters at the Chilco House. I don't think that belongs in a report like this. That's a policy decision that we haven't made, haven't considered all of the ramifications of that. So again, I just feel like this has gone so far beyond what was intended at the start. So I don't mean to derail the presentation here, but if our purpose tonight is simply to accept this report, that's one thing. If it's to actually make design selections, actually start, then I think that's a very different issue. So it's not clear to me which track we're on here tonight.
Yeah, Robert?
Yes. You there, Rob? Yeah.
Yes, yeah, thank you, Robert. There, like option B with, some of the points that, I mean, this is a great job. The district, since I've been on the board, hasn't really gone into all the facilities like this. And Michael and Charles, I mean, this is a really good job that you've done. Some things in here, like the training tower, there are a lot of other training towers that we can utilize. Are we in 3 to 5 years? Are we going to do a centralized fire training academy and go back to that other concept at the College of San Mateo, or are we going to have our own? And those are decisions that I think that need to be made then. Are we going to share training with other agencies? And then secondly, this EOC. I mean, we haven't really got into the weeds there relative to, who's got that responsibility? Are we going to have an EOC? Is, the different communities that we serve, Atherton, East Palo Alto, and Menlo Park, are they? So, yeah, this is, as Jim said, this is, a great model. Let's say that the communities delegate, okay, that emergency prep and that emergency responsibility to us. It would, 3 to 5 years or whatever the situation is, and to use some of these options. And I think this is a great reference document for us to look back and say, I'm going to need this training tower because the College of San Mateo can't provide the training that we want as a fire district. And then secondly, the EOC. I mean, are we going to need an EOC, or are these communities going to take over that EOC responsibility? So I think it's a great starting point, great document, but we're 3 to 5 years ahead of us a little bit. Thank you, Robert.
Any other comments? Directions? Chuck, you muted? Got to unmute yourself, Chuck.
I'm sorry. I think the suggestion for the consultants to point out the changes, I know that at the last meeting, several of the directors brought up some things that the consultants were going to look into. I think focusing on a couple changes could be helpful to us, just to signal the difference between this and what we saw before. But I think I agree that I don't know that we have to go into this level of detail, because these big policy issues have to be resolved first before we. But I tell you, the information is very helpful. I mean, the fact that a training tower costs $14 million, that's something that if we're going to have conversations with our jurisdictions, we're going to have to talk to them about $14 million. So, I mean, I think this is helpful information, but deciding where all this goes on a site plan, I think, is premature at this point.
Right.
Yeah, I think we'll defer to the chief on how you want to move forward. Typically, this is for informational purposes mostly, and to be able to offer any questions. We were not looking for any particular decisions at this point. Typically, this would be in the next kind of step to making that decision-making process for what the kind of the master plan or the decisions are for facilities rolling into the future. But not necessarily at this point. I agree. This is not the, the time to make those decisions.
So I think in terms
So
of,
with that, we're happy to proceed, and we're happy to just do an overview of any changes and then be available for questions if that would be better serve you.
yeah, I think that's probably where the energy level is at this point. So if we can do that, then we'll move through it. And if there's any pertinent or questions that the board members might want to have at that point. But I think the changes are important because I think all of, even looking at space needs, I think it's, Jim brought up a good point in terms of, the space need. And I think you probably incorporated most of that, what you may have heard, into your design work. And so it's always, as Rob mentioned, as a reference point. And when we get to those policy issues, as Chuck mentioned, that the policy issues will be identified, and I'm sure that within this scope of what you have done will probably pop up one of these screens in terms of design work. So yeah, the relevant changes that you see that you have, you want to highlight those and at this point.
Yeah, and in the sense of the plans, there have been no changes to the plans, to the different options. The biggest change was refining the cost. In our last meeting, we had some just initial cost to help with the discussion to give some sorts of magnitude to the different options. And then those now have been refined, so that will be a more extensive tool. And that was about what was left with our proposal.
Robert, can I ask a question?
Yeah, Rob,
Yeah, Michael, the thing, and going through all these options, as I said, great planning, great report. I'm concerned about the smaller stations like Station 3 and Station 5. Those two, if you could pull those up for me, I don't want to ruin your presentation, but those are the specific questions that I have. I can understand, the aspect with Station 1 and, all the different options that we have, relative to that. I'm more concerned because of the, our clientele in Stations 3 and 5. I've been in those neighborhoods and I know their concerns, and I know that they are small stations, and there's a decision we're going to have to make as a board, to move those stations if they're effective or not. So if you could go over that, Michael, that would be helpful to me if my other board people want to go forward with it. Thank you.
Yes, we can definitely take a look at those. I see, Charles, you have that pulled up.
Is that the?
Yeah, thank you. I see that. Thank you, Charles.
So are you talking about, Rob, so we're clear, because I think we want to be clear about what moving forward, what they're going to say. Are we looking at the changes from last time? Is that what you're looking for, and not going through the each details of it? Or
Well, yeah, the thing is, I'm concerned about, Robert, is that after the first presentation, I had gone into those areas and spoke to some of those residents, and they're pretty happy with the size and the type of service that they get from those engines. And since Engine 5 is in my area of responsibility where I live, I know my neighbors in the Suburban Park and Lorelei Manor and Triangle, they're very, very happy with having that Station 5 where it is. So if there's any change in 3 and 5, Michael or Charles, was there any other, like, I know they're small stations and, maybe they need some renovations, relative to, I don't know, electrical or plumbing. What is it? Station 5 was built in the 50s, I think.
So just as a summary, Station 3 and Station 5, quality-wise, there's not a lot of deferred maintenance. They've been kept up. They're in relatively good shape.
Okay.
The biggest thing with each of those stations is the size. The ability to store materials, to provide the fitness facility at each of them. Now there is an option for Fire Station 3 to help with that, and store their apparatus there. It's currently working, is what we've heard from the district, relatively well. So both of those were kind of seen as lower priority based on the facility's condition. The largest, like I said, the largest thing is the size and what they offer. We are seeing that many other departments are, as they can afford, move these stations forward into more current standards.
Okay.
Charles, if you just want to turn to just the site plan for each of those two stations.
Yeah.
I think we just showed, as Charles said, the size of the station, the options that are available there, as you'll see under the existing station is there, and a secondary storage can be added to the rear. This option A shows if Station 3 was enlarged to the property immediately adjacent to it. But then it was also looked at just to add the storage facility in the back that could be utilized as exercise with the station at the size that it is.
And this, I think Mike alluded to, but just to point it out a little bit more, you can see the Station 3 size right there in comparison to the space needs of what would be a call it a more modern station.
And then
equivalent.
And that space needs would be a 2-bay fire station as opposed to the smaller footprint size that we currently have today.
Okay. Robert, I yield to you because I'd like to see the blueprint again for Station 5, but it's up to you. You're running the agenda.
I think I deferred not running. Yeah, the agenda is set, and so pretty much I need to honor what some of the how the board feel about
Right.
the pace. The pace is pretty much the pace, and the depth of information. And it seemed like it was given the task to go and make some changes based on refining the numbers, and so that's what they have. And so I think if the pace, if we focus in on the changes and focus in on the numbers, and then because I think the space need in and of itself, Rob, you just got to point out, and they just got to showing where the additional need for that particular, for example, Station 3, that's the need for that particular station based upon the information that was given to them. So if the information that was given to them is in question, then of course what we're going through right now doesn't make sense. So I assume that the information that is given to them, it made some sense, and so that's what they have came back with a design based upon what the information. So again, policy issues is one thing. Information given to them about certain needs based upon where they got that information. So this is what we got. So if the board wants to just say, hey, okay, we don't want to hear anything else, or we just want to target just on those changes, let's do that, and so we can move on, because we got a pretty full agenda with 4 of the items that's pretty exciting.
Robert?
That we need to get to. Who is that, Jim? Okay.
No, I have a comment.
One of the, just to focus on changes, one of the things I remember asking about after that last presentation was the warehouse facility, and how would the toxics issue on that site affect the cost? And in reviewing this final, I don't know that's been addressed, has it?
We did do some research on that. Not being environmental consultants, we can only offer so much and go a little bit further, but can you
flip to that chart real quick while you're talking, if you can?
There is no chart, I apologize. I can go to the site though, just so we can talk about that.
I believe it was page 37.
Yeah, I can go here to here you go. So the current remediation plan, they went through and did all the remediation they could except for underneath the warehouse. They also didn't take studies underneath the warehouse. So the amount of quantities of contamination underneath the building are not entirely known. Most of it is on the east portion of it is what looks projected, but it hasn't been, we don't have the information on those as well as require additional study. What is in the report based on if it's more than 500 milligrams per kilogram would be that it would have to be removed from the site. If it's, there's a kind of an in-between area that was in the report, but it may be able to be capped. It would,
Right.
whatever is disturbed would have to be removed, but if it is within a range, it could be capped. And if the use is as a warehouse, there are no additional, that use is permitted, I guess you could say, within that cap. You couldn't put like residential over it, but as a warehouse, it would work.
Are those mitigation costs reflected in this rough order of magnitude number?
They are not. Typically, as that's by the polluter, so more of it would be a coordination cost, I believe, that would have to be incurred by the district.
All right, thank you.
And I would say there'd be more of a schedule duration that would need to take place.
Robert, could I ask a follow-on to that while they've got this slide up here?
Sure, absolutely. We free falling now.
I was wondering if there was any study of the issue of sea level rise. I know that there's some various plans perhaps for building a seawall or some other kinds of things. And I mean, is it even feasible for us, for example, to raise this property 5 feet without triggering the environmental remediation problems?
I don't think it would. The plan actually says that whenever the building is demolished, that it needs to be remediated, regardless of if anything's built there or not. It's basically that it was excluded because there is a current building there and they can't basically demand that the building get torn down to do the remediation. But once it is torn down, it's supposed to be remediated.
I think if I may, Chuck, I think that a lot of some of your questions could be along that line, could be answered and as well as the rest of the board, because it all has to do with toxins, is that at some point that we bring or have a meeting with Michelle Dare. She's the environmental person hired by the city to work with all their environmental issues from the city. She's part of the planning department to talk with her about specifically our site and how the other companies are mitigating exactly what Jim is talking about in terms of having a concern with. Because I think that would be the best way to kind of hopefully get an answer to that particular area of question, because it seemed like it keep popping up, and I think we need to go to the source where we can get the accurate information on that. And that there's no disparagement about Charles and Mike, but what I do know, living in the city and knowing the players and the who's involved in this kind of thing, I think Michelle Dare is the person we need to invite to our board meeting, have a meeting with her to get the information that we need or trying to seek for.
Robert, could I ask you one other question related to what you just said?
Sure.
Very recently, there's been a lot of information about what's going to happen at the end of Polgus there, where Jobs' widow bought the property. Do you know if those plans are at the point that also would involve Michelle and so forth?
Yes, right. Early on, when the plans come in, they have to get an environmental review, and Michelle and the planning department goes through that, and then they issue issue recommendations to the developer if they want to move forward, what they have to do, and then taking the entire planning department, putting that review together and giving it to the developer. And then at that point, the developer is going to say, yes, we can take care of this, or they can't, and the project is stalled. But for the most part, every plan, every inch of that area has a plan for it. And every inch of that area went through a toxic when Roman Chemical was there, plant was there, as well as Ron Palon. And a report has been given, and so a mitigation has been given to each developer who want to develop their site. Even the developer behind our site, he's having to face and do certain mitigation around what you mentioned earlier about sea rise and flooding, which is great for him because that's on the backside of us, and so that'll take care of our particular needs at that point in time. But I think in terms of just talking to her and meeting with them, I think we can get a lot of those issues taken care of. Answers to those questions.
Robert?
Yes, who's that, Jim? Yeah.
I'd like to move that we accept this report as a conceptual representation and one that in no way commits or binds the board to any policy decisions relative to its contents.
Okay, there's been.
I'll accept that. I mean, because I agree with Jim to a certain extent that this is it's great information, but I'm not sure if this will. It obviously encompasses the needs that we are trying to address in terms of a needs assessment. But I'm with you on that, Jim, in terms of a needs assessment.
So a motion been made to accept this subject to what was that, Jim, again?
Just as a conceptual study document.
Conceptual study document.
And the board will not be bound by any policy implications, contained in the document.
And that motion been made. Virginia, second. Any further discussion?
I want to just ask before they leave, the consultants, just one quick question. Do you have a number that you use for the cost per square foot of construction that you could provide?
Which site, Chuck? All of them, or
just a general or even a range?
Yeah. Go ahead, Mike.
Go ahead, Charles.
It does vary by site and by type of facility, but generally for a fire station, kind of in the Bay Area, what we're seeing now, and then this has some additional costs added to it, is in the $800 to $1,000 or $1,100 range per square foot. That would include site work as well, so it depends on how big the site is and other conditions.
Thank you.
Yeah, and just to clarify that does not include any underground parking costs. So any portion of a building that is over an underground parking garage, there'd be additional cost for the underground parking added to that.
I just wondered one last thing. Do you have an opinion? I mean, we got some bids on rebuilding Fire Station 4 that came in substantially lower than we anticipated. I'm wondering, given the number of big companies that are kind of leaving the area and also the number of people working from home, seems to me, and I know that commercial lease rates are falling right now. Do you expect that the contractors are going to become a lot more competitive and prices may be different from this $800 to $1,000 a square foot?
I can speak. We just received another bid for a fire station in Contra Costa County that was not a lot, but a little bit under the engineer's estimate. They expected it to be closer to 11 million, and it was right around just a little right around 10 million. And so there were the short answer is what we're seeing is there is a little bit of a softening, but what we were seeing prior to that was the opposite, that things were continuing to climb up until very recently, and we're seeing a little softening right now. And I think it'll really just depend on how we come out of COVID and if things recharge up I think there can be some effects there. And if we see some a slight recession, then I think you'll see that softening affect the construction prices. But prior to seeing this recent bid that we watched as well, that you guys received, and the one up in Contra Costa and some others, we were actually seeing the economy continue to increase in the construction realm. So it was our estimators were continuing to apply an escalation cost. So in talking to our cost estimator, this was the most recent bids are kind of new to be lower. So for your guys' sake, we hope to see that continue to soften a little bit for you, but it's a little bit of an anomaly right now, and we're kind of in unknown waters. So that's where we're at.
Thank you.
Okay. So are any other questions, comments? We have a motion on the table. Roll call, Michelle?
Director Bernstein,
Aye.
Director Crawley,
Aye.
Director Solano,
Rob?
Aye.
Okay.
Director McLaughlin,
Aye.
Director Jones.
Aye. Thank you, Charles. Thank you, Michael, for your presentation and the hard work you put into this. I'm sure it's gonna, these drawings are gonna surface back up to us again at some other point in time. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you for letting us help you out.
All right. Have a good evening.
You too.
Thank you. You too.
Okay, we came to the most exciting part of our agenda right now, and that is the nomination and election of board president and vice president for calendar year 2021. Can I get a yes, sir?
Yes, sir. I'd like to nominate Jim McLaughlin.
So
for
before
president.
we, can we get the process going? But
Sure,
you
I'm
want-
just excited.
You know, I know you are. Everybody's excited about this one. So what we're gonna do is take the nomination. We're gonna take the names, and then if there's only one or two, then if it's one, we then just vote. If there's two, then we'll vote for each one of them, and the highest vote for the category wins. So that's the process. If anybody has an objection to that, take it up with Michelle and not me. So if that works for everybody, we'll start that process. So up for nomination now is board president.
I'd like to nominate Jim McLaughlin, our vice president, to become president for the 2021 year.
Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, then we'll call for a vote. Michelle?
Director Bernstein,
Chuck?
Director Bernstein,
We'll get back to him. Let's keep going through.
Director Crawley,
Aye.
and Director Solano,
Aye.
and Director McLaughlin.
Aye.
Thank you, Director Jones,
Aye.
and Director Bernstein.
I apologize. I was rustling some papers, so I muted myself. I enthusiastically make it a unanimous vote. Aye.
Fantastic. So Jim, you're it for next year. Get on your COVID gear and get ready.
Well, thank you very much, all.
Okay. So now there's a vice presidency vacant, and so
I'd like to
call for
nominate,
nominations.
I'd like to nominate, let's see here. Who else do we have? Chuck Bernstein for vice president, please.
Okay, Chuck Bernstein for nomination. Any other? I would like to nominate Virginia Chain Crowley. Okay, any other nominations? All right, so we'll start off with nominations for in order that was brought out. All those in favor for Chuck Bernstein as vice president, say roll call. Michelle?
I thought Steve was going to say something. Sure.
Oh, we were? Steve?
No, that's okay. I think we can move forward. So this is for Solano's nomination of Director Bernstein. So Director Bernstein.
Aye.
Director Crawley,
Aye.
Director Solano,
Aye.
Director McLaughlin,
Aye.
and Director Jones.
No. All those in favor for Virginia Chain Crowley, say aye.
Or we'll do a roll call.
Roll call.
Oh,
Yes.
Wait, excuse me. Wasn't there just a 4-to-1 vote to approve of Director Bernstein as the vice president?
Yep. There was. So are you saying that we are not to go any further than that? Even though one was nominated?
It seems to me that the decision has been made.
yeah.
Okay. I'm open to that too. So now let's Virginia withdrawn her nomination.
Well, I don't even think I need to withdraw my.
Yeah,
my-
she doesn't need to withdraw.
Okay. All right. So there's Chuck Bernstein is now the vice president. Welcome on board, Chuck Bernstein, for 2021.
Thank you. I appreciate the confidence.
So we'll move on now. We finished that bit of a business to item number 13, which is consider awarding a contract and related action concerning the Turner Fire Station 4 rebuild project. Chief?
Yeah, Director. So you have the report in front of you. I know we sent you some supplemental information that, the attorney Steve may want to comment on regarding some late developments on Friday that was sent to us from the Carpenters Union. I don't know if you've had a chance to read it. I know we bombarded you with thousands of pages of information between last week and today. Apologize for that, but just a lot going on, as we know tonight. Obviously, in this process, we picked the lowest bid qualified vendor, which we're recommending. In the supplementary information that I did send you, I can just tell you from my perspective, I did call up one of the other fire agencies, San Mateo Fire Department in San Mateo County, talked to the chief over there about their experience with this vendor, which was both good and they were complimentary. So I wanted you to know that. That said, I know that the contractors on the call tonight, they have the ability to speak if you want to hear them. John Hitchcock's on this call as well. Hopefully this time his system will work. He's been working closely through the entire process, from the site walks to the bid process to this report and rolling it out for you. The fire station, as you know, the crew has been moved to the building behind the house. We've presented in previous months where we were with this project, the estimates of what we thought the project was going to cost, and then equally, all the schedule and everything associated with what we were doing with the county. We have their approvals. We're pretty much ready to go. Of course, that's up to you. So this is really the final step before an award. If we do the award, we're going to obviously follow the schedule and rebuild Fire Station 4, which we're hopeful to do. I believe you may also have the representative from the Carpenters Union here tonight. I know if you do not, you should have the letter that they wrote, because I wanted to make sure you had all that information. And if I'm missing anything, Stephen, let me know, because there is some relevance to all of that tonight.
So how did the board want to proceed?
You ask questions?
Okay. Chuck, was that you?
Yeah, that was me. I don't,
Okay.
I have a bunch of questions, but I don't need to go first.
Why not? You don't want to talk. So
Okay, let me ask the chief then. Chief, I saw that you had sent me some response after the meeting started at 7, so I haven't had a chance to review it, and I apologize if I'm repeating things. But I just want to ask you, are the building plans that we submitted have been formally approved by the county? Is that correct?
Yeah, my understanding, if we can unmute John Hitchcock, because he's got he's closest to the project, or if John can unmute himself, hopefully it's the real John Hitchcock this time. So Michelle, if you can unmute John, or if John can unmute himself, then he can speak to that.
Yeah, I can.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. The building plans were resubmitted to the county, and they have been approved by the departments, and they have been conditionally approved. They're just waiting for us to award the contract, and then there's some informalities that need to occur with the contractor signing some paperwork, and we forward that over to them, and then they will stamp the plans, and then we can go pick them up and get our permit.
Okay.
So long story short, yes, they've been approved, and we just have to get the contractor on board.
And can you explain the part of the contract that references this notion of deferred approvals and what that means and what it relates to?
Sure. So typically in every contract, there are some deferred approvals, such as building alarms, for fire alarms, for fire sprinklers. These are systems that are not designed by your architect. And so you would have, you would assign the general contractor to design these systems. So they would hire a licensed engineer to design it, and then they would submit that to the jurisdiction having approval. In this case, it would be the Menlo Park Fire District, who would review those plans, stamp them, and then the subcontractor would then install it.
And do I understand correctly then that the contractor has taken the entire risk on the cost of those deferred approvals?
That is correct. So their original bid includes the cost for the design and the installation of that system.
Okay, well, that was something I was concerned about, so I thank you for responding to that. I was concerned that we didn't have plans and that there could be some change and we'd already be into change orders. I wanted to ask also about the performance bond. Do you know what that costs us to, I mean, I know the contractor buys it, but we pay them for it. Do you know what that costs?
At this point, I do not. So the performance bond is based off of the contract value. So it's different for every single contract. So typically after the contract award, the contractor will submit a schedule of values. And within that schedule of values will be a line item for their bonding and insurance. And so after the contract award, they'll submit that to us and they'll be able to tell me how much it is. But at this point, I do not know how much it costs them to acquire that.
But again, they've agreed to cover it no matter what.
Correct. And I think my response to you was for Station 6, I think it was like $120,000 for the bonding and insurance.
Okay. And I wanted to ask our general counsel about the $2 million maximum kind of general liability coverage. Does the district have a policy about our coverage on this? And I'm surprised because for the people where we do it, we in some cases, we have to provide more than $2 million and we're just a little tiny organization.
So can you hear me? I'm hearing a weird.
No, we can hear you.
Okay, so I usually defer to the agency's risk manager and risk management or the insurance broker as far as what insurance levels are appropriate for a specific project. So I have not been involved in discussions as to the appropriateness of the specific levels of coverage here. So I'm afraid I don't have a great answer for you, Director Bernstein. I wonder whether John Hitchcock might have an answer.
I do have an answer for that. The contract was provided to our insurance broker who reviewed that and provided commentary on it and stated that those insurance levels were accurate and that's how we proceeded.
Meaning that's accurate, meaning it's kind of a normal coverage?
Correct. And he did make comments on certain other coverages that we were either missing and we added or needed to be increased, and we increased those.
Okay. And then I do want one more question for the general counsel here. Did you actually review the contract yourself?
Yeah, so this was one of the first things we did as your general counsel, is that we worked with John and reviewed the entire bid package, made some suggestions largely to bring the package up to compliance with some relatively recent statutory provisions. We reviewed the contract itself that will cover the bid package and apply to this project. And so the short answer to your question is yes.
And let me ask you further then about the mention in the staff report about waiving our purchasing policy. It seems like we've just kind of attempted to affirm a purchasing policy, and we're being asked now to waive it. And I was interested in your thoughts on that.
Sure. And just, I think I'll just review my understanding of what the issue is to make sure that our understandings are the same. Right now, the district's policy reserves to the board the sole authority to approve public works contracts of any amount. $1, if it's a public project, only the board can approve contracts. And I think your chief has anticipated the situation in which there is the need for the district to enter into a small public works contract less than $10,000 that is associated with this project, and it's not appropriate to do a change order with the contractor for. It may be that this never comes up. Frankly, I'm not sure I can give you an example of what a public works contract less than $10,000 associated with this project that should not be subcontracted by the prime. This may never come up, but if it did come up, the district's policy would require that to be accomplished through a formal board action. And so by waiving the policy in this instance, you are only covering that unusual scenario of a public contract less than $10,000 associated with this project in particular. And it is purely a matter of policy for this board, whether it wants to weigh in on that category of projects or whether it wishes to delegate that to the board. I don't have a legal view as to pros or cons. It's just a question of what kind of authority you wish to delegate.
And the fact that the board has approved a contingency on the project does not authorize the fire chief to go ahead and use that contingency for one of these contracts?
So that's a separate issue. By establishing a contingency, you are just creating a line item budget that there exists within the project budget, an item for the contingency. You are being asked also to authorize the chief to approve change orders with the prime contractor up to that contract contingency. The $10,000 waiver of the of the purchasing policy applies to a different scenario. The chief does not want to issue a change order. He wants to actually contract directly on behalf of the district for a contract under $10,000. That's why I said I think that's unusual, because for the most part, something will come up and there will be need for a small change order, and that would be covered under the contingency. And there's no need to address the purchasing policy.
I said, that's why I was confused. I didn't realize we were talking about two contingencies. So let me.
Have I explained that
Yeah, no, you
confusion?
explained it well, thank you.
Okay.
John, could I come back to you and just ask you?
Chuck, you want, I mean, went over kind of
Yeah, I'm
5
sorry.
minutes. I
I've got
want to
more
make
there.
sure that everybody else have a question. If not, then you can ask here to midnight. I'm okay with it. Anybody else got any questions you want to ask?
Yeah, Robert?
Yes.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead, Rob.
Well, first, I'd like to yield back to Chuck so he can finish his thoughts.
Okay, well, that's a good move. Chuck, Rob, yield back 5 minutes. Go, keep going.
Okay, I'm sorry. I really only have about 3 more.
That's okay, we got to midnight. Go ahead.
I spent 4 hours reading it, so
we all did.
John, I was curious. Could you indicate what prompted you to include this provision? Was there something you had in mind that would require this approval, this intervention by the chief, or this contract by the chief?
Sure. So we've actually included it on the Fire Station 2 and Fire Station 6 project. I don't believe we've actually ever used that provision, and I hope never to use it. However, the reason why we do have that in there is in the rare eventuality that there is a dispute on a change order with the general contractor where they may want, we'll say $9,000 on a change order. And the district says, no, we think it's valued at 5,000 and we cannot come to terms. And the district is unwilling to pay them that extra $4,000. The district can then go out, get 2 additional bids. And if the district can get a bid for, we'll say, that $5,000 price, then we could either, if the board has authorized the fire chief to proceed, we could contract directly with that low bid for $5,000 without going to the board for approval and move forward that way. Or if the board has not granted the fire chief approval, we would have to go then back to the board and move forward. Alternatively, we could approve the change order for $9,000 and move forward that way.
Okay, well, thank you. And what you said, it wasn't clear to me why, but what you're saying makes a lot of sense. I then just have one last question. On page 51, you have a project budget chart. Could you indicate which are the new numbers you're asking for approval? I know the contractor bid is one of them, and the contingency would be one. What other numbers there are new numbers that we haven't already approved?
Okay, I'm going to try to remember off the top of my head because I do not have that in front of me. So the board has approved 2 contracts already. The board approved a contract for the architect firm, which I believe is the first line item. And then the board has also approved a contract for the construction manager and the project inspector, which I think is probably like the 3rd line item. Those are the only 2 line items I believe that the board has approved so far. And then obviously tonight we are asking you to approve the general contractor line item. And actually you have approved another line item, which is the general contractor for the site improvements. So that would be.
Okay, so let me just make sure. Design and engineering is the first one, and that's already done. Plan check and environmental review is already done.
Plan check and environmental review, you did not approve because those are not contracts.
Okay, construction management and full-time inspection, we already approved that, right?
That is correct.
Okay, construction is new.
That's the one tonight.
And then construction site improvements is new.
No, that one you did approve.
Okay, administration and legal.
That is just general administration and legal fees.
That's not been approved previously, right?
Those are not contracts. Those are just general fees that we may incur.
Okay, and then the furniture equipment alerting, that's a new thing too, right?
Those will be future contracts.
And special inspection geotech, is that part of this contract or is that new?
Those will be new.
Okay, and utilities is new also.
Yes.
And district contingency is new. Okay, I appreciate that. And were there any problems with our design and engineering budgets and our construction site improvements, or did those come in on budget?
So the only one that is 100% done is our construction site improvements. The design is ongoing until we're 100% done with the project because design includes construction administration. But as far as we are currently through our design, we are on budget.
Okay. Thank you. And that's all my questions. Thank you. I appreciate it. That's helpful. I wanted to know, I don't want to kind of approve something that was already approved. And I just wanted to be sure that I just wanted to understand what the costs were. And there's no reason to think at this point that the inspection what you said in the last report is that we were on schedule. And so your estimate for construction management and all that still seems like a good estimate.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Robert, I have a question. I have a question, Robert.
Yes, go ahead, please.
Oh, thank you. If I may, Chief, may I direct these, well, just the questions that I have to John?
Of course.
Okay, thank you. John, on Station 6, who is the construction company we use?
That was Gonzalez and Strong.
Okay, and then I don't want to take you back to the Station 2. Who was that?
That was DL Falk.
Falk, okay. We've never used this construction company before, have we?
You're referring to the one,
The present one.
Station 4?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
No, we have never used Saucel.
Okay. And they were the lowest bidder?
Saucel is the lowest bidder on Station 4.
Okay. Is there anything in there that talks about in the contract, will they'll use a percentage of skilled workers or trained workforce?
I'm not quite sure what you're asking.
Well, what I'm asking is that I remember all the issues that we went through with Station 2. And what I'm trying to anticipate is the workers or the individuals that would be assigned the project, that they would be I think it's a minimum of 30% need to be skilled workers relative to a construction project that goes in the public sector. So I was just concerned about what the percentage was of skilled workers referenced this contract.
I don't believe there's anything required in the contract for that.
Okay.
And Rob, they're on the call, so if at some point you want to have them say something, they would know that better than us.
Maybe I'll jump in if that's okay for a second. Maybe this will help, Director Solano. There are requirements in state law that are incorporated into this contract as follows. All subcontractors must be properly licensed, and all workers must be paid prevailing wages and otherwise comply with labor code requirements, which include certain apprentice requirements as well. You may be referring to the skilled and trained workforce statutes in the public contract code. Is that what you're referring to?
Yes.
So any public contract code requirement is incorporated into this contract, and the contractor is expressly obligated to comply with them and within its bid price. I don't believe the bid called for them to specify any particular percentage, but if, as the chief indicated, you might ask them. I think they're here.
That would be a good question. Are they on the call, or can we text them? Or
I believe they have a representative on the call, and if I'm right, he's raised his hand and is hoping to answer your question right now.
Is that Josh Ward?
Yes, it is.
Are you there?
Hello, can you hear me?
Josh?
Yeah.
Yes, we can hear you.
Go ahead, Josh.
He's on mute now.
Is he on the screen, Virginia?
Yeah, he's on the screen at the, well, for me, the bottom right-hand corner.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Well, very nice to meet you all. I've been watching and eagerly listening. So, actually one of the reasons I wanted to be on here is I honestly just felt like it was a good time to just be open to any questions you guys have. This is what we do all day, is we do public works. We build a lot of fire stations. We're actually currently working with the same construction manager and architect at another fire station in San Mateo. So I know that this is, the public works arena is a pretty unique arena. So I'm very familiar with it, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions you guys might have.
Okay.
So I think the first question that was just asked, I don't mean to speak for you, Director Solano.
Sure.
Go ahead.
No, as I asked of what percentage were skilled or trained in your workforce that are going to be involved with this project?
Well, so in terms of an exact percentage, you know, that actually varies. I mean, there's a state rule, there's a state law, right, that determines there's a certain percentage. And we make sure for sure that's going to always going to be the minimum that we provide. The fact is, we typically overrepresent in our skilled and trained workforce. We use an apprenticeship program to the Associated Builders and Contractors to make sure that we always meet state, federal, city, county standards. And so that should not be an issue ever. I would be more than happy to put you in contact with our representatives at the ABC who staff not only our certified trained employees, but also our apprenticeship program.
Okay. I'm voting tonight though, so, you know.
Well, I think
what I'm saying is that there's no, I can't give you an exact percentage. It's a percentage of which employees we send to which sites. They're all trained apprentices. We've got essentially all of our carpenters that we use, and I'm not sure what we have on this exact project. The fact of the matter is I'm not the estimator on this project, but the reality is we more than whatever the regulations are for our requirements, we always supersede that by a numerous percentage. So I mean, what is the percentage on this job? I can't tell you. I don't know what the requirement for here is, but I know that we always more than represent what's required by the state, by counties. This has never been an issue for the SAWSA.
Would you do a letter of intent to say that you would have that percentage of 30% or more?
Absolutely. That's no problem. All employees, 30% or more, that is not an issue for us whatsoever.
Okay. So the law actually requires 60% or more and defines skills and trained. I mean, I'm sure I've never heard of a firm not being compliant with this. It means that their workers are graduates of a certified apprentice program.
Yes, and that's not an issue for us to do. We do this on every project. I got to be honest with you guys. You guys got to understand. Our entire business model is all public works. We do all schools, fire stations, libraries, all public facilities, and this is never an issue. So, I mean, tonight it's going to be hard for me to call on our apprenticeship program and to our certified trainer program to show you what the facts are. I mean, tonight is going to be difficult to do that, but I mean, certainly all we've done in the last 40 years is public works and applied by every law and been more than they've required ever since. So,
okay, all right, that's fair.
And Director Solano, I'll just point out one other thing that hopefully to give you some comfort in this. I'm just scouring the contract while we're talking. One of the grounds for termination by the district for cause is a failure to provide enough properly skilled workers.
Yes, Stephen, and the last question I have is for you, if it's okay.
Of course.
Yeah, I see in your conclusion, you're saying that they were responsive, and that there's substantial evidence exists which the district bases determination necessarily is a responsible bidder. The union letter, especially in light of Sassoon's response, does not add new information that would require the district to reconsider its previous determination. So is that saying okay, or is that saying that the bid was provided properly?
So I believe you're focusing on the issue of the responsibility of the bidder, not the responsiveness of the bid. And I will explain what I mean by those two differences if you would like.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
So is that it? So okay. So the responsiveness, there are two requirements, three really, for the district. You have to award a contract to the lowest responsive and responsible bidder. So the lowest price is easy to determine. It's just a numerical standard. Responsiveness is measured by looking at the four corners of the bid package alone. If we say submit form number 27 and they submit form number 27, they're responsive. So just have they satisfied the requirements? And in this case, I think the district's determination and our independent legal review of their bid, you should have great assurances that their bid is responsive. Responsibility goes beyond the four corners of the bid and asks whether, based on extrinsic evidence, the bidder has the qualifications and trustworthiness and the quality and capacity and capability to perform the contract. And that's determined not only from their bid package and their bid response, but from other factors like checking references. In this case, there was a pre-qualification questionnaire that they had to fill out describing their past performance. Your chief has asked other agencies what their experiences are. So that's a subjective determination made by folks with expertise in their field. And I'm just a humble lawyer. So my job is to review the district's determination of responsibility and advise as to whether it seems that there's substantial evidence to support that determination. And here I unhesitatingly can say that that is the case.
Okay.
So in other words,
Right.
the bid is responsive and I'm legally comfortable with the determination that the bidder is responsible.
Okay. Thank you, Stephen.
Sure.
Robert, oh,
Just real quickly, a question for John Hitchcock. John, how soon after the contract is signed will demolition begin at Station 4?
So we're looking at starting in early January. Typically, after we come back, we could probably start as early as the second week of January, as long as weather is favorable.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Robert,
Yes, Virginia.
I have a couple of questions actually in response to Steve's memo to the chief regarding the concerns that the carpenters union had. I can understand. I was just kind of, well, maybe I should ask, is someone here from the carpenters union?
I don't know. Michelle, is there anyone here from the Carpenters Union?
I don't have anybody raising their hands.
Okay, so I can understand, I think, some of their concerns, but you know, I haven't studied all the issues enough, but your memo, Steve, had little parts in there that said technically blah blah blah. You know, so I guess my concern is what their concerns might be without knowing more information. You know, like technically things could be X, but you know, what are these concerns? Although, you know, maybe there's nothing to be concerned about. So I'm just, I mean, I can give you some of the language, but
When you say blah, blah, blah.
yeah,
Director
I'm trying to find,
You strike me in the heart. Blah, blah, blah is where lawyers live.
sorry, I know, I need to find the actual language.
Blah, blah, here we go.
Sorry.
Very
But I
good,
use
Stephen.
the word technically, and I had to find it. But I mean, in any case, I'm just concerned that they're concerned about things. So John, some of, and I guess some of the agencies that the carpenters included in there were like the Redwood City School District, I think Palo Alto Unified, and some other agencies as well. So, I mean, I know we got all of this late, but did we do any follow-up to see how legitimate the concerns were? Or were they just like so small that they're just not that big of a deal? I'm trying to find Steve's
Are you talking
memos.
about are you talking about
So Virginia, let
reference
me try and respond. Let me, if I might try and respond.
Please.
So the first is just to address your comment about my characterization of the union's concerns as being technical. I'll give you an example of what I think it may be the only example that I thought of as technical. It is a requirement on the bid that the bidder list the name of its subcontractors and provide the license of each subcontractor. And Saucel listed a firm that it called DeFreitas
Yep,
and listed
and
their
DPI.
and listed their license number. And the union has alleged that was a mistake because the license is not registered to DeFreitas, it's registered to DPI. But DPI is DeFreitas Plumbing, DeFreitas Pipeline Incorporated.
Okay.
DeFreitas is the name of the man who runs DeFreitas Pipeline Incorporated. And so I characterize that as a technical nicety, but not amounting to much. It was an accurate description of both the subcontractor and its license number. So that is what I describe as a technicality. And the answer to your question of what did the district do in response to the letter from the Carpenters Union local is we sent it to Saucel for its response. Oops, sounds like you're trying to say something, but you're muted.
Yeah, no, I saw that. But then there's like number 6 in your memo, or your memo, union allegations, civil wage and penalty assessments. That the union identified 3 instances, and then Saucel had a response, and then you said technically Saucel may have been a party to the wage and penalty proceedings. So I mean, yeah, technically things may have been or could have been, and so I just that for me, that language, the technical this or technically that, were like little red flags.
Okay, well, so I'll learn better that technical is a red flag. That's not what I intended in that section. The reason for that use there is the Carpenters Union has reported 3 instances in which subcontractors on Saucel projects were issued prevailing wage violations. And when the DIR issues civil wage and penalty assessments, the prime contractor is listed as a party to the administrative proceedings, even though the penalty is associated with the conduct of the subcontractor. And that's, I think, what I meant by technically is that Saucel was a party to the wage assessment. When you look at the front page, there's Saucel's name, but it was not related to Saucel's conduct. It was related to the subcontractor's conduct.
Okay. And I know that in the finance committee, there was concern that there might not be enough of a percentage set aside for contingencies. And that, I mean, that's why I'm just bringing these things up, because we just got all of this information from the Carpenters today. So I didn't get a chance to, read thoroughly everything. I read Steve's memo, I read the letters. So I was just, Robert, I know, and was had some concern about enough set aside for contingencies, and we were assured that in fact that was pretty much a standard percentage, and I know that's what we've used in the past, but it just kind of made me think, if there are issues or challenges here, do we have enough set aside for contingencies? And I don't necessarily want to go beyond the standard, but I just want to make sure that we're covered, because I think of Station 2 also, even though that was a different situation. I mean, it was an interesting market. I think there were more market factors at play there, with our contractors getting higher bids from private developers for private jobs. And so they took those jobs and then came back to our job, and, things kind of got drawn out, if I remember correctly. So I just want to make sure that we don't have those issues again. And, just the letter, I haven't seen a letter like this really before. So I just wanted to be cognizant of the fact that, I just don't want to run into trouble, that there might be trouble, but there may not be. I don't know. So, I mean, I'm confident in your assessment, Steve.
Well, my assessment as to the adequacy of the contingency, I mean, I don't have a feeling about the adequacy of the contingency.
Right,
John
which
Hitchcock
is a
should
different
probably...
issue from what you were addressing. But so based on that, Robert, remember you brought up the percentage that's set aside for the contingencies. Do you think we need to set aside more?
Rob Solano, right?
No, Rob, you, for the finance committee, remember we had this issue and there was a percentage that was set aside for contingencies for
Mhm.
overage or whatever, and you had mentioned that, is this enough?
Right, we was talking about, I think it was this about 4%, and I was just asking it should be, I thought it should be a little bit higher, at least 8%. So yes, I did say that.
Do you still have those concerns in light of the carpenters union's letter? Because I
Well,
thought about that when
it's
when
just
I
a standard, I developed for almost, 15 years, and
yeah.
there's a certain standard that I use. It doesn't necessarily mean it hold value to the public works, the fire district. So I'm okay either way. I just use that as, I thought it might be not enough. But, I think the chief and John have done a good job in scrubbing the numbers. So I think, I think I can live with 4%. I think that's what the number was.
Yeah. So but I wanted the rest of the board to know that that was an issue that was brought up in the finance committee meeting. Just because when I read the materials that we got, or the documents we got today, that came to my mind.
Well, I raised it to, raised the number on contingencies only based upon the fact that if there's, somebody, today the cost maybe for steel maybe, $100, tomorrow, depends on, it may go up to $110, so that
But
kind of shoot a hole in the budget a little bit. So having having the contingencies just there, it's just a backup.
Right, but I'm thinking of delays and things that we've encountered as well. So
Yeah, rain delays, we never know, especially starting off in January, generally because of climate change, our whole clock of weather pattern is totally off. So it may be okay. It may start downpouring, a lot in March and April or May. So, and depending on how many rain days delays we have in there, that may eat into some things too.
So John Hitchcock, do you think that maybe we should consider a higher percentage between the 4% and 8%? The 8% meaning that the percentage that the finance committee members brought up, or are you okay with this current percentage?
So we're actually at 5% for the change order budget. And to give you a little bit more history, Fire Station 2, I believe the change order percentage ended up being around about 6.5%. And a lot of those change orders were driven mostly by the district changing the design of that station. Station 6, that station was approximately around 3% at the end of the construction of that project. And most of those were driven by unforeseen soil conditions.
Yeah.
So if we get, if we don't have rain delays and we have good soil conditions, I don't see a whole lot of design issues. So, the 5% change order budget should be sufficient to get us through this project.
Okay.
So we should be fine.
Okay. Thank you.
It wasn't me. So
Oh, it's
is
me.
there,
I'm sorry.
are there any other questions before we
I have a
call
couple.
a motion?
I have a couple.
Yes, sir.
Let me ask one to John, just to help understand this. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this union thing right now, but John, without going into all the details, but just in general, were some of the bids we got from firms that were union firms and some were from non-union firms?
That is correct. We don't require them to be union or not. And the only thing we do require is that everybody pays prevailing wage.
Okay, thank you. That's all I want to deal with on that. And then I just have one last question for for our general counsel. In the staff report, it was mentioned, and I don't want to make a big deal of this. I just wondered if we get people, we have to adhere to certain conflict of interest, provisions and things like that. I just don't want somebody who's being critical of this contract to take issue with something in the staff report. And there was a slight mention or a minor mention of prior relationship with our architect and who was the other one?
Construction manager.
Yeah, construction manager. I just want to know from your standpoint, is there any issue here? Is there any signature we need to get or any affidavit we have to, obtain or anything like that relating to that?
There is none. The statement of the staff report is that this bidder has, quote, worked with, end quote, the architect and construction manager. That does not mean that they are in contract with each other and work together. To the contrary, the architect and the construction manager are under contract with the city, helping the city manage and supervise the work of the contractor. And that would be the situation here. So you don't have a situation where our construction manager or architect have divided loyalties because they owe the contractor some contractual duty on a different project. Far from it. On that other project, they would have the same oversight role as we are asking them to have here.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Robert?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm ready to introduce a motion that we accept or that we award the contract to the successful bidder.
I'll second that.
Motion been made, second. Any further comments?
If I could,
sure.
Director Jones, there are a few more related items that it would be, did you want to take them one at a time, or did you intend, Director McLaughlin, and I should say President-elect McLaughlin, in your motion to include the other staff recommendations?
Accept all of the recommendations contained in the staff report.
Thank you.
Can we be specific though about them? I'm not
Do
disagreeing.
you want to read it? Just read it, Jim?
I do not have it in front of me.
Oh.
Steve, you want to, maybe Steve
I
can.
have it.
Sure, the recommendations are to, or go ahead, Director Crowley.
I can read it. Do you want me to read it?
Yeah, may I interrupt for a minute? Steve, can we do this by resolution since we prepared two resolutions? One was to award the contract and accept the budget. And then the second resolution was to waive the district's purchasing policy and authorize the fire chief to approve agreements under 10,000.
That would be fine if you wanted to have two separate motions. I have no problem with one motion adopting both resolutions. So either way is okay with me.
Oh, okay, that's fine. I just go ahead.
Jim, if you want to withdraw your motion, I'll just make the motion and read it out loud if you want to do that, and you can second it.
That'd be fine.
Okay, so Jim's withdrawing his motion, Michelle, so I can make the motion to adopt a resolution authorizing the fire chief to execute a contract for Fire Station 4 rebuild general contractor services with Saucil Corporation in an amount not to exceed $11,050,000. And 2, establish a contract contingency for the contract with Saucil Corporation in the amount of 5% of the contract value, and authorize the fire chief to approve change orders up to the contract contingency. And 3, approve the Fire Station 4 project budget in the amount of $15,500,000. And 4, adopt a resolution authorizing the fire chief to enter into and execute additional agreements valued under $10,000 for the Fire Station 4 rebuild project, thereby waiving a purchasing policy requirement that would otherwise apply. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you.
Motion been made, seconded. Is there further comment? Michelle, call for roll call.
I want to ask a question. I have two resolutions here, but I don't know where Virginia got the 1, 2, 3, 4 from.
The first page of the staff report, Director Bernstein,
I see. Okay, thank you.
very top under the.
Oh,
budget.
yeah, sorry, Chuck, it's under recommendation.
Okay, I was reading the resolutions themselves. Okay, thank you.
Well, it's a good question, though. The resolutions should match this. So I know that in the Finance Committee, there was an issue about that, but I think they do match that.
Okay.
Michelle?
Director Bernstein,
Aye.
Director Crawley,
Aye.
Director Solano,
Aye.
Director McLaughlin,
Aye.
Director Jones.
Aye. Motion's,
No, Robert, go ahead.
no, I said motion carries. Yes, Chief?
Yeah, so I just wanted to, appreciate the board, and this unanimous support. And I wanted to acknowledge John Hitchcock and all the work that he's done. Steve mentioned, as soon as Steve came on, this was like the first project we actually worked on jointly. It was a little bumpy at first, but I think everybody got used to working with each other because there was a lot of moving parts. So I want to say, thanks to Steve for that, and Nicole, who we've been working with since on this. And, for Josh, who I've never met, but for Saucel, I know that Chief Iverson had nothing but good things to say about your company, which put me at ease once we started.
Thank you, John.
And, in closing, just as a note, I was in the trades before I came in the fire service. So John knows I pretty much do the job site visit every day, at least on an orbit around the block. So, we like 0 change orders. So just so you know, we're at 0 on change orders is our kind of motto.
Well, I don't know if you can still hear me, but I appreciate the confidence. I think you'll be happy with what we can do for you. And the only change orders you have are whatever design changes you decide to make during the course of the project.
I knew it sounded like you're going to make it work, Josh. We appreciate that.
We'll make it work. We'll be happy to work with all of you. We're personally not, happy to see these kind of letters come from the union, but look, it's understandable. They've got a lot of people sitting on the bench and they're looking out for their own people. So I get it. We're happy to work with you guys. I think you'll be happy with us. And we look forward to meeting with all of you in person as soon as that's possible.
Just make it happen. Make it happen.
We will.
All right. Thank you. Moving on to item number
14.
14. To adopt, consider and adopt a resolution approving the master pay schedule for all district employees. Chief, you want to key that up or?
Yeah, this is an annual thing that needs to be done. And as I, outlined earlier and in previous discussions, I know there was some concern about 2 of the comp plans. I hope that with the property tax information coming in and with the PERS related information also coming in, that's alleviated the concerns. But I don't want to suppose that. If there's, hopefully this will just move through, but if it doesn't, then you need to take a modifying action. But with that, that's your choice.
Any comments from the board? Members?
I have a comment, Roger.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, let me just be clear here, Chief. In the past, this has been essentially just a routine, almost rubber stamp thing because we'd already approved all of these pay things.
Right.
I think I made the motion, if I'm not mistaken, back in September, October, and I was triggered in part by the AFSCME's concerns that other groups in the fire district were getting 3% raises, and that was not what we awarded them in our contract to them. And so I made the motion to consider it. I am disappointed that we haven't had that discussion, but here we are at the 11th hour, and I think that I'm interested in hearing from the other board members, but I'm assuming that the numbers that you've put out here include the 3% raise to the other groups, the confidential and the chief officers.
Yeah,
And
that's correct. So the comp plans, as approved by the fire board 2 years ago, because it was a 3-year, have not changed. And so they're exactly what they were for the third and final year of the comp plans that are in front of you tonight.
Yeah, and I think, again, I'm not for a moment quarreling with the outcome as much as I'm feeling that this was a discussion that should have been agendized. I'm disappointed it wasn't agendized. And maybe I'll just leave it at that. I will continue to say, though, that these things are referred to as a 3% increase, which is not in fact true in most cases. This is an 8% increase because it includes a 5% bump in pay that's virtually automatic. And where some people will get 8% increases, other people will, who are at the top of their schedule will get 3% increases. And that just troubles me in general. I think it's a bad system that has those kind of inequities in there. I think we've also in our budget, we turned down proposals to upgrade, I think 3, perhaps 4 different positions so that they could get the clock started, or get a whole new series of merit steps approved. That wasn't approved, but we keep doing this thing where we hide the real cost, the real increase in cost. And we cannot continue to have 8% increases in perpetuity. And I think that's one of the reasons we have one of the highest payrolls per capita in the per employee in the state of California. So I'm concerned about that. And it's not something we have to do. I think I'd like to see us have a better system, and particularly management employees where, well, anyway, it's also been, it's normally presented that somebody starts at step 1, but I know from prior meetings that actually isn't the case, that employees can be brought in at higher levels. I think it's at your discretion, maybe other people's discretion too, maybe a supervisor's discretion, so that people more quickly get into these top pay levels. And we jump ahead of the merit thing. We don't just do it year by year. So I believe we have a system that is not beneficial for the district. I believe it needs to have some work. I think we will have some work done on it. So I'm looking forward to, in the future, looking very hard at both the compensation structure, the compensation amount, and also the benefits that we provide. So I think we need an overhaul on it. I think whether we approve this tonight or not is maybe not such a big deal. We've only got 1 more year of life on it, but I think it needs overhaul. That's all I had to say on it, Robert. Thank you.
Robert.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Chief, I know we always talk about salary versus actually what our revenue base and what we actually get into the district in order to run it. What would you say the percentage is now, salary versus our gross receipts and what we actually take in?
Yeah, the last time we checked that, I think we were at one point we were in the high 60s, but we're in the low 70s now, which is, unheard of really in many cases too.
Right, and I want to thank you and your staff for keeping it basically under 90%. A lot of these public service agencies, one really close is at like 90% or something of what their actual budget is. So I commend you and your staff to keep it that low. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other comments? So item 14 is to consider and adopt a resolution approving the master pay schedule for all district employees. Is there a motion on the table or further discussion is needed? Well, I will make a motion, if no one else will, to consider and adopt a resolution approving the master pay schedule for all district employees. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Uh,
Oh, wait, I'm sorry, there were two came up at the same time, which Director Crawley or Director Solano?
well,
I'll yield to Director Crowley.
Thank
No,
you.
it doesn't, I don't care. I didn't even see Rob. I didn't hear Rob. That's why I blurted it out.
the motion has been made.
And I'll second it.
Second by Virginia. Any further discussion? If not, roll call, Michelle?
Maybe just confirm, could you just confirm for the record and for the minutes that there was no public comment?
There are no public comments?
Thank you. Thank you, Steve. No public comment.
Director Bernstein?
I'm going to vote nay, and I'd like the minutes to reflect that the effective increase for the majority of employees is 8%, and I think that's excessive.
Director Crawley?
Aye.
Director Solano?
Aye.
Director McLaughlin?
Aye.
Director Jones?
Aye. Motion carries. Moving into item number 15, discuss a contract renewal for the SLAC National Accelerator Laboratory. Chief?
Yeah, Director, so the report that you have focuses on the changes that I was asked to go back and, I don't know if I would say negotiate, I would say discuss with SLAC, because remember, this is one of those agreements where collaboration is kind of the key. As I kind of reiterated last time, since they're a federal entity, they don't necessarily need to have a contract, but they've decided, based upon past history and discussion with LAFCO, that was a prudent and reasonable thing to do. That said, they tried to come up with a more realistic structure that worked for them and hopefully would work for us. We did discuss this the other day. I know Director Solano also asked about communications issues, which I sent him some information, Director Jones, some information tonight. As you can see, they went back and proposed a sliding scale that would increase in the first year of 1.5%, essentially for the first 2 years. And remember, the station's going to be in construction, and then the patrol pumper will not be on site up there because there's no place to put it. So that was how we got another 1% towards the agreement. And then they propose when the patrol pumper comes back in the third year to go up by the 1%. And then in the next 2 years, once the truck is added with the patrol pumper, if that happens, they're proposing to go up 2% per year. They did do some recalculating on what they were paying. They went back and did, the point that Director Bernstein made, I think was a fair point, and trying to be fair to them. The call volume has gone down because of COVID. And in general, they were starting to get the call volume down. So, they reassessed their own need, not just because of what was going on currently with COVID, but going forward. And when they can repopulate the campus, which they anticipate may happen by the middle of next year. I don't know if it could happen sooner, but we'll see. And so this is the formula that they proposed in here. Most of the contract points were the same. I did try and focus on the positives that we get, the communication site that enhances district-wide communications, the use of their facility, the auditorium facility up there we've used for graduation and for the UAS conference. And then we also are able to use their site for some joint training or individual training, whether it's for wildland fire and so forth. So there is some mutual benefit for having them as a partner. And again, it is a Menlo Park address. So regardless, we would have to provide service delivery to the site, even if there wasn't an agreement in place. So this is their counter, if you want to call it that. I personally think it's fair, but again, I leave it up to you, and happy to answer any questions about what we kind of went through to get to this point.
So Rob, did your question get answered? I know you had a question regarding the communication.
No, well, yes and no. Yes, it did. And thank you, Chief, for preparing it in such short notice. The thing I'm still, I see that the
the communication still outside of the facility with the repeater system and the upgrades and everything, we're fine. I'm still concerned about the actual buildings, the cement buildings that are there. And I did read all the battalion chiefs and stuff, and I appreciate all that. And they're even there, what is it, assistant fire marshal that's on the site?
Right, yeah, Lance Lowy
Yeah.
sent us information on, the protocols that they have, which are extensive because we're dealing with typically radiation, right? So we can't just go running in the building, to be quite frank.
Well, and so I still see that those cement buildings are still an issue. He talks about fire, but I'm thinking more of a barricaded suspect or something like that that could cause first responders to go to the facility other than just a fire type situation. And they would of course need the communications on there. So I understand the outside is fine. TEA, they had mentioned something in there, and I'm trying to pull up this email where they had talked about that there was one. If you give me a second, Chief, I can bring.
Yeah, the command 11 channel has some RF interference, is what he wrote.
Yeah, and I think he wrote something about the cement buildings too.
That was actually Chief Coyle. He wrote, at least from what I read, we have obviously large inside concrete structures, but it's similar to many other buildings in the district that are concrete, like the older tilt-ups. The problem with any radio frequency or communication system is that they just don't do well through cement. And, one thing that Slack does do different, and I think your point about if it's not a fire, that's relevant for any one of those structures anywhere. But I will say Slack has a more extensive protocol based upon what their business is in terms of how the buildings not only would be shut down, de-energized, cleared, and there would be, an all safe before we would go in on any one of their structures, just, based upon the nature of the business. So that, that's a little bit different than other commercial buildings.
Yeah, I'm trying to pull that thing up.
Want to come back to you, Rob, and see if anybody else
go
had a
ahead,
question?
Robert. I'm sorry to hold you up. It's just
No, you
Get a lot
can
of
still look
emails.
at it. Chuck, Mr. Bernstein.
Yeah, I want to say, I think Slack is an important customer of ours, and I'm glad we serve them, and I'm glad they're happy with our services. And I think we should do whatever we can to retain their business. And I also think that payments in excess of $400,000 a year is a substantial payment to us, and it helps. And I also appreciate the structure of the revised approach here, that we have an escalation every year, because that reflects what actually happens. And I don't want to beat a dead horse here, because this really would require some analysis to see, did we start too high? The fact is, though, if this were a restaurant and we were increasing our costs by 5 to 8%, and we were only charging the customers 1.5% more per year, we'd be out of business at some point. Now, that's not going to happen here, but I'm just saying at some point we need to address this. And when we get to that level where the price really reflects the cost of what we're providing, we need to be increasing our escalation at the same rate that we're increasing the cost of service. Otherwise, we're letting our taxpayers subsidize Slack, and I don't think that's fair. And I'm always mindful that Slack might not really have to pay us if push came to shove and so forth. So I think all of those things need to be kept in balance here. But anyway, I think this is much improved. It's rational. It reflects some increase in costs, as it should. And I'm going to vote for this. But I'm just saying that as a business model, this is not sustainable. So.
Right. Well, and I think, Chuck, you made some good points, and I'll say this too. I mean, you had a fair point from their perspective, is that on baseline, volume is way down, right? So frequency and what they're paying for is at half. And still they're being fair. And you're right. We did a baseline when we entered into the agreement. And that's how, we came up with the numbers that we have. And you're right, at some point, and maybe it's the next time after you go through the main contract and renewals, which I believe is 5 years, there needs to be a reassessment on what is the district's baseline. And then that's a more relevant number along with, some level of frequency. But, that's how when we started this whole thing, we did all of that. And that's how we came up with the number that we ended up with. And at this point, I don't think they or us wants to go too deep down that road, only because you just don't know what will come out of it. They're also dealing with their own, folks at the federal government. So, who knows what they can come up with. But it was a substantial savings for SLAC to take an offsite their fire protection. I mean, they're in our zip code. And, even though it was hard for Palo Alto, and it wasn't easy for us either, because it was a legacy contract for 40 years through the university, which then created another set of problems for Palo Alto Fire at Stanford, which I was unaware of until it all came up. I mean, this was a big move at the time, and it's worked out very well. I don't think they've ever felt like they've had a loss of service or a loss of quality, or were put at additional risk, which, as you may recall, was some of the early accusations that the district would not be as good or able to service them or do any of the things that, quite honestly, have not turned out to be true. And if you were to ask SLAC what they thought of the service and the delivery and the relationship, I'm sure they would give you it's an A+ platinum, service level that we provide for them, and they're extremely happy with what we do. So, and it's been a good partnership with them too.
Robert?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Chief, with your recommendations of your senior staff and TEA, I'm going to vote for this too. Okay.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, I think we can go forward with that. And, if operationally, if, your senior staff feels that it's sufficient enough, safety-wise for the personnel, I'm going to vote for this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Can I get a motion, call for a motion?
I'll move to approve the contract renewal on the terms stated.
I'll second that.
Motion been made and been seconded by, motion by Chuck, second by Virginia. Any other further comments? Hearing none, then I call roll call, Michelle.
Director Jones, I've been instructed by our attorney that I should note that we received no public comments on this item. So going from there, I will take a roll call vote.
Thank you.
Director Bernstein?
Aye.
Director Crawley?
Aye.
Director Solano?
Aye.
Director McLaughlin?
Aye.
And Director Jones?
Aye. Motion.
I'm sorry, Robert, I did it twice now. Go ahead.
No, I said motion carries. So we'll move on, Chief.
Yeah, pulling the trigger too fast. I want to let the board, I want to let the board know that this is just the financial element. Steve is still going to look at the legality portion that they have said they've modified. There should be no other stipulation changes, but that said, you're still going to get this come back to you for the final in its entirety. Because, this is one of those ones where I don't feel comfortable just giving you a piece and then somehow we do a broad approval. So this will come back to you one more time when all the I's are dotted, T's are crossed, legal's looked at it, and everything is completed. This was obviously the biggest component of the whole thing because it's the nuts and bolts on the dollar amount. So I'm sure they'll be happy that you went with that. But just for full disclosure, we worked on this piece specifically because this was the biggest change. And the other stuff that you've seen before outside of the legality clauses and other things that Steve needs to take a look at and work with their legal counsel on, we're pretty much there, but it will come back to you.
Thanks a lot, Chief. I know you and your team have been working really hard on trying to keep the relationship and pull this together. So I appreciate it very much. I think we all do.
Thank you.
Item reports and requests, committee reports. EPREP,
E-Prep? E-Prep?
yeah, EPREP,
Okay.
Rob.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I want to thank you for the year of service that you've given us. It's been between the pandemic and everything else going on here in the world, and especially in our district. I want to thank you for your service this year and the job that you did. Thank you. Second, I'd like to talk EPREP. We went over the RFP for the review of the emergency prep. I don't know if you want to call it section or unit or our response relative to not only the fire district itself, but the communities we serve. We went over that. Brian prepared a good presentation relative in the direction that he's trying to go with some of the training and adding the training and the meetings that he's had with the different volunteer groups. So, things are starting to get together and blended a little bit here. So I'm pretty optimistic that this is going to go forward and we're going to work a lot more. And of course, with the RFP, we can make an independent determination as to what direction that we can go, and maybe hoping that the other communities will assist us with these volunteers, because they are a valuable resource that's definitely untapped. Chuck, you want to add anything?
No, that was good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chuck. Thank you, Robert.
You're welcome. HR?
Nothing to report, Robert.
Strategic planning. I think we pretty much done talked about that in our earlier conversation. So I think we pretty much, thanks to Belinda for her report. And I think that's pretty much what the strategic planning committee have been working on. So let's see, what else? Who else? Finance.
Yeah, we had our meeting, which I thought was good. And tonight, a lot of the things, well, most of the things that we discussed were approved. So thank you for that. And I'm glad that we had a good discussion about the Station 4 rebuild project. So thanks for the input from the board. Anything to add, Robert?
No, I think he did a great job.
Thank you. Thanks for being there too.
Any liaison reports anybody got? No? Okay, reports, requests of directors. Any reports, Virginia?
I don't have a report per se, but I do want to thank you, Robert Jones, for leading us through a very difficult and tumultuous year. No one could have expected the kind of year that we had, and you led the fire board with grace and being smart and resourceful and collaborative. And I just want to thank you for your year as president during one of the most difficult times. I hope that you see the silver lining in all of this too. I think we had a lot of participation from the public, and you had to navigate how to use Zoom and have these virtual meetings, which we never expected that we'd ever have to have, but you did it so well, Robert, and I just want to thank you for your leadership this year.
Thank you, Virginia. I don't have any money for you, but I appreciate
I never asked for any, and nor would I ever. I meant it.
Comments for it. So I guess we'll get down to any other reports, request, Chuck?
Yeah, I wanted to say thank you also, Robert. And I'll tell you, I enjoyed tonight's meeting. I felt like we covered such a wide range of topics, from labor contracts to construction contracts to customer contracts, to really all sorts of things. And I think we did it in a respectful manner. And I appreciated the tone of all the directors. And I also just want to thank the board members for their confidence in electing me as vice president.
You know,
Okay, so Jim?
I just want to join in my fellow directors and thanking you for your service, Robert. You know, you've always been that calm voice of reason, kind of that calming influence. And I appreciate that. I appreciate the vote of confidence in electing me as president. All of you four have held that position before. I'll be new to it. So with your help and guidance, I hope we can navigate through a successful year. I'll be in touch with you individually in the next couple of weeks, you know, regarding committee assignments. You know, I'd like to pair up, you know, interests and abilities and, you know, make the best fit we can. So thank you again.
You sound presidential already, man. You already. Rob, got any comments before we move on? We close this out.
I don't want to hold us up anymore. I think I said enough tonight. Thank you, Robert.
So in my final closing, I want to give a round of applause to all of you because this year has been really unexpected. If we were sitting here last year, we would not have predicted what went on this year. And I want to thank all of you, all the board members for your patience and for your willing to roll up your sleeves and get down to looking at the district in a very thoughtful manner. I want to thank Jim for being VP because he's always a man of deep thought on issues. And I respect that a lot, even though I may not agree with all of them, but it's the fact that he gets you to thinking. And having us, when we're having our meetings at agenda setting meeting, it's always been I look forward to those times that we can sit down and plan the agenda. I also want to thank Michelle and Kathy. Michelle for her leadership with me in terms of getting me through board agendas. And without Zoom, I think I really would have had a difficult time. So it was right before my face. So as well as for good advice about things when it comes to administrative work for the district. And Kathy for her patience. I know she's sick and she's not with us right now, but understanding the numbers is very important and critical to me. And Kathy has been very instrumental in making that happen. I want to thank also the chief because I think I'm not sure how other folks feel, but I'm sure you feel the same way. That the chief is, there's an old saying, and some of you are probably too young, most of you are probably too young for this, except for maybe Rob, he probably can get this. There was a entertainer called Sammy Davis Jr. And I think Sammy Davis Jr. was he was a actor. He primarily got his fame in dancing. And Sammy Davis Jr. would call the hardest working man in show business. And he was. Sammy, you ever seen one of his performances? He had sweat coming down from the head to the toe. And he was always on, always performing. Chief remind me of Sammy Davis Jr., not so much in color, but because he was African American, but the way his demeanor is in terms of he's like the ever-ready battery, just keep going. We have conversation at 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock at night. I'm trying to figure out, does he ever go to sleep? But his heart is so full of trying to make the district the best it can be. And I really appreciate him for that. Appreciate his leadership and for myself as new guy on the block and as president. I think his leadership with his employees and to the fire district is exceptional. I think people admire him for the work he's doing. And I also look forward to continuing working with him to improve the fire service to the residents in the district. I also want to thank the board of directors. I mean, you guys got your own unique kind of way about you. And that's okay. Life should be full of uniqueness, because everybody like me, it would be a very dull world. So I appreciate all of you for who you are, even though I may not like some of the things you say. And that's okay. That's part of the uniqueness you bring. I think overall, if we continue to try to work together, move in success for the district, then the district is going to be much better. The residents are going to be much safer, and we're gonna accomplish the goals what our mission is all about, to protect and to serve. I mean, that's what we do, you know. And I also, in closing, will also like to say good luck to the new board president and vice president. You're going to need it because the work is still yet to be done. We still got COVID on our side, and it's still here. I know it's impacting us in East Palo Alto like crazy. Currently, there's 2,400 people that has been affected. It seems like every week there's almost 100 additional cases. So it's still here. And that's one of the things why I admire about the chief. He saw the need and he jumped in early on to try to help the city start getting tested in East Palo Alto, because he, you know, I guess you heard a lot of my stories and pulling together this mayors from both cities, and we sitting down talking about it. And he saw the opportunity to provide fire district service to make that happen. And I really appreciate him for that. I also want to, in closing, say going forward, how do we bring harmony back to the board? How do we bring harmony back to the district? Because I think our residents is going to be looking at us very hard next year for our leadership and for our direct participation in making disaster preparedness where it needs to be, making continue to make our district innovation and creativity. Tonight, I was very encouraged by the Zone Haven project. I think that has a lot of potential to do a lot of good, especially when they can target information to people. So I'm very hopeful. I'm you know, I know it seemed like I felt like I've been being put out to pasture, but I'm being put out into the president pastures, because everybody go that route, and then but you also provide get busy a little bit further. So I'm continuing to look to try to stay busy, stay active, because I think there's so much work yet for us to do. So with that said, I will say thank you very much from the bottom of my heart, and it's been a good ride as president, and I'm looking forward to 2021 with all of you. So thank you. So if any public comment number 3, Michelle?
We have no public comment number 3.
Oh, hallelujah. So with that said, and if all hearts and minds are clear, I think I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
It was moved and it was moved again. I'm not sure who moved second time.
We had it happen again, both two at the exact same time.
Oh, who was that?
It was Director Bernstein and Director Crawley.
Okay.
Oh,
so,
I didn't even hear Chuck.
I didn't hear Chuck either. So I
Second
guess
it, Chuck.
I'll let ladies go first and I'll be second.
Okay. It's been moved by Virginia, second by Chuck. Roll call, Michelle?
Director Bernstein?
Aye.
Director Crawley?
Aye.
Director Solano?
Aye.
Director McLaughlin?
Aye.
Director Jones?
Aye. It's been passed. The meeting is now over, and have a good night and have a good dinner.
Thank you.
Happy holidays, everybody.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Bye.
Bye. Take care.